Okay, it looks like we are live. All right, so today I'm going to do a tier listing of each NFL team's off-season, that being their off-season in 2022. There's still some things that'll happen, like some good players will get picked up. The season starts in a few months still, but I would say maybe 90 to 95% of all transactions probably were um, enacted prior to now. So there's a um, got a pretty good understanding of how well every team did. Um, so I'll just be going through this website. So this is just NFL.com, um, and they do a good job of just basically giving summaries of what happened. So these are additions, and then we got departures, and then I'm just using ESPN here to show off draft picks that each respective team made. This is a website called Lineups, which does a nice job of showing snap counts for each team. So um, basically seeing which players got playing time and which didn't. That's helpful. And then we got Spot Rack here to show off player contracts, because that can be helpful in analyzing how a team did. And then we got Tier Maker, which is a fun little tool. So where will San Francisco go? But I'll go off of how the NFL is listing teams here, just to make it easy. All right. So this is my first time streaming, so hopefully all the technical aspect of it is fine. All right. So first of all, we got the Bills. So I'll just give you a little as to why I think I know what I'm talking about when it comes to how these teams are doing. After the 2020 to 2021 NFL season, I decided to evaluate pretty much every player in the NFL. Um, so I know how good Matt Barkley is, Case Keenum is, Jamison Crowder is, how good Duke Johnson is. I know how good every single player that the Bills added in this list. I know how good every single player is. I've watched tape on every single one of these players and assigned them a value. And I assigned them a value of basically how much am I willing to pay them. So if you're worth like $10 million or less a year in my grading system, then you're replaceable. You're not an impact player. Um, whereas like teams that are going to do well in this tier listing, they are going to be worth much more than $10 million a year, like absurd amounts of money, sometimes billions of dollars a year relative to what the average player is worth. So that's just how I grade players. So with that being said, this video would go all day if I analyzed every single player, but I'll just point out the difference makers that the teams added or lost, and that includes through the draft. And keep in mind that I've actually only extensively evaluated the first 3 rounds in the NFL draft because I figure um, I figure that uh, players drafted in the first 3 rounds are the most likely to get playing time. Anything beyond that, I'm not sure what the data says. It's like rounds 4 to 7. How often do they actually get playing time? Um, but that is actually something that I would like to do, is evaluate more players. In my mind, I would only want to do that if my video, which is basically evaluating the top 45 picks of the draft on my YouTube channel, um, I want that to get to 10 likes and 200 views. So if we can make that happen, I'll make another video and do, say, the 46th pick to the 120th pick, and I'll do my evaluations of those players with video evidence of why I'm saying what I'm saying. And then I'll get better understanding how good other players are, and also you guys will benefit because you'll get to see some nice analysis, hopefully. All right, so Buffalo Bills. So this is the only team that I've basically like thought about extensively because it's the first team on this list. Other than this, I've done no preparation for the rest of like the NFL. So I'm literally doing this on the fly. All right. So Case Keenum is a good quarterback. I actually think they should have just kept him and Teddy Bridgewater and then not signed Kirk Cousins to $30 million a year because Case and Teddy Bridgewater are on the same level as Kirk Cousins, like slightly above average, but not game changers. So Case Keenum's bounced around, even though I thought he did well for the Vikings, but he's a good backup quarterback, and he's probably better than Josh Allen. Um, yeah, Josh Allen should be a tight end. Sorry. I mean, if his ability is literally like shedding tackles and running with the ball, he should be a tight end. Um, yeah, that might be controversial to Bills fans. Don't at me. Although I do want you to at me. I mean, I'd like people to interact with me, but I think Stephon Diggs extending him, he's worth this every penny. The fact that Josh Allen had his career turnaround last season, I think the only variable was Stephon Diggs coming in. Like, did Josh Allen went from people thinking he was a bust pretty much to like MVP candidate in one season. Did Josh Allen get so good over the offseason that that he suddenly became an MVP candidate, or was it because he had Stephon Diggs join his team? Like, players aren't playing in a vacuum. Patrick Mahomes has regressed a fair bit since his offensive line has gotten worse, apart from Orlando Brown Jr. And yeah, like his running back core hasn't been that good, things like that. So quarterbacks, it's only outstanding generational quarterbacks that can overcome like extreme like lack of talent elsewhere, I think. Anyways, I'll also only take really into consideration players who will probably get decent playing time for my evaluations here. Like Duke Johnson, he's got gonna play. He's got Devin Singletary and Zach Moss to play behind. Duke Johnson's a really good player. I just don't know how much he'll play, so that ties into the evaluations. And I'll probably just ignore players that don't make a big impact. Now, getting Roger Saffold, I'm a huge fan of whoever's like evaluating the Bills' offensive line talent because they have a filthy offensive line, which contributes to Josh Allen's doing well. You know, he can stand like a statue like he does in the pocket for a long time and wait till some guy gets open because of the great ability of his team to bring in offensive linemen. Roger Saffold's one of the best guards in the NFL, so he's probably going to slot into left guard and wreak havoc. Mitch Morse is a very good player, so getting him for more time's great. And Von Miller, like he's legit. Obviously, as an edge defender, this contract is crazy for like a dude in his 30s. Like you're gonna want to get Von Miller-esque production for the next 3 years or so at least, with $51 million in guarantees. So great to get him. I don't know. Probably get better value elsewhere, but right. So basically, yeah. There's some decent additions here. So we'll just go to departures. How are we going with the stream? All right. Feel free to leave a comment in the chat, guys. All right. So I suspect Jamison Crowder will replace Cole Beasley as like the designated slot receiver, and that's not like a huge change, I don't think. Darrell Williams is a good offensive lineman. They saved some money by cutting him. What's weird is that the Bills drafted Tommy Doyle, who's like would be one of the best tackles in the NFL, but they've stuck him on the bench, and they've been playing fellow draftee from the same draft, Spencer Brown, who I don't think is very good. So it's just weird how like they the Bills are great at bringing in offensive line talent, and yet they played guys like John Feliciano and Spencer Brown, and even Dion Dawkins isn't that good. When you've got guys like Cody Ford and Ike Butker and guys like that, who I feel like might be slightly better players or whatever. Anyways, Ife Obada, probably. I'm really bad at pronouncing a lot of these African names. I think I need to go to Africa, go on a holiday to Africa, and start learning some of these, how to pronounce things. Obada's a great player, and he played a bit for the Bills, so not a huge shift in talent there, but yeah, he's a good player. All right, and unfortunately, Bills fans, the Bills had the worst draft in the first three rounds. None of Elam, Cook, and Bernard are not good players, I'm afraid. You can look at my evaluation of the top 45 picks as to why that is. When Alarm, yeah, you can watch my videos to what I think about Alarm. James Cook, I think my scouting report on him was that he just leaves. No, I think, did I feature him in the video? If he was the 31st pick of the second round, I don't think so. He doesn't fight for extra yards and has no understanding of when to like pass protect like on the fly. From what I could see, and Terrell Bernard, unfortunately, my evaluation of him basically says like runs around like a headless chicken. I mean, I'm not sure he knows what he's doing. So unfortunately for Bills, I don't think you got any difference makers in the first three rounds. But who knows? I mean, you guys the Bills drafted Tommy Doyle and Jack Anderson, two elite offensive line guys in the later rounds last season. So there might be some great players in here, but again, I haven't evaluated them. All right, so yeah, basically that gives a good summary. I mean, I don't really need to look at these other sites for the Bills at the moment. So considering that they added two great players in Saffold, and maybe I should open up another tab for the departures. Hopefully I don't get confused. All right. They got Saffold and Von Miller and didn't really lose any big time players, so I'm going to give them a B, because unfortunately their future hasn't really been improved too much because of that poor draft. All right, and again, this is just very rough. Like you'll get an idea of the general sentiment of what I think about each team's decisions based on this. Okay. So now the Dolphins. Now you might have noticed in the thumbnail I had a Dolphins as like A. Was it an A? I think they are, based on who they've acquired, I think they've just absolutely dominated the offseason. Teddy Bridgewater is an above average quarterback. Now Tua is a big drop off from him. So hopefully they play Teddy. Anyway, Chase Edmonds, elite running back. Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert's good running back. Alec Ingold is one of the best offensive players in the league. And he's so good that he actually got decent snaps for the Raiders at fullback. And not many fullbacks get playing time, but he's the kind of guy like just make him the designated tight end, but just move him around in the backfield, right? Because he's a good receiving threat and after the catch threat. So the Dolphins getting him was great. So Tyreek Hill is, I suppose I should sort of clarify like the different tiers. Tyreek Hill is a like perennial Pro Bowl level player for good reason. Giving up a 2022 first, second, and fourth, 22 fourth and sixth, and then giving him that much money. Look, there's plenty of receivers on the market that are much better than Hill that could be gotten for like veteran minimums or whatever. Like just off the top of my head, Cameron Batson, a guy that I evaluated, or a guy that I have a highlight video of on my channel. He's unbelievably good and brings a similar skill set to Tyreek Hill. Like, can beat you down the field or with the ball, make you miss and stuff. Um, Keelan Cole was a free agent and got picked up on a 1 year deal by the Raiders, I think, and he's much better than Tyreek Hill. So giving up this much draft capital for Hill, I don't think it was a great idea, but he's still a difference maker, so can't criticize him too much. Cedric Wilson's a good player. Teron Armstead's a good player, but that's a lot of money for a guy I think who's hit the age of 30 or whatever. Connor Williams, outstanding player. The Dallas Cowboys had a huge talent drain in the offseason. Like, this is just, they're just adding great players. Thomas Morstead's one of the best punters in the league. Xavier Howard's a good cornerback, but yeah, it just makes me cringe a bit when I see some of the contracts handed out to guys when they're not the elite of the elite at their position. I mean, Xavier Howard's probably held up as that around the league, but come on, let's be real. There's much better players around. Although, there's not all that many great DBs in my opinion. I think a lot of talented players growing up just end up playing offense. So Teddy B will replace Jacoby Brissett as the backup quarterback, and they're similar level of play. Malcolm Brown didn't really get to play for the Dolphins much, but he's a good player. Same with Duke Johnson, same with Philip Lindsay. Philip Lindsay is a top 5 running back in the league, no question. But he's going to be in a crowded backfield for the Colts, so like he should be. If you give him 20 carries a game, you're pretty much guaranteed to win. He's that good. All right, and as for the draft, I'm not sure if this is the best site to be showing off the draft, but yeah, so the Dolphins traded away all their picks, so all of their first and second round picks for Tyreek Hill, which is a good trade off in the end. You're gonna win now because of that. Channing Tindall wasn't a difference maker from memory. I suppose I should look at this just because there might be dead money, but because like having heaps of dead money on your roster is just not a great look. I mean, often there's not much you can do if like a previous general manager made a bad decision or whatever, and you got this contract you got to get rid of. But yeah, there's no real harmful dead money here or anything. Wow, 18 minutes already, and this is the second team. Yeah, Miami gets an A. If I could give an A plus, I would. They got some absolute monsters in this offseason. So again, they're really gonna leave some, unless Tua Tagovailoa really improves over the offseason dramatically. They're gonna be leaving some wins on the table if they play Tua over Bridgewater. But based on the talent they got, like they could be like a 12-13 win team, as opposed to missing the playoffs like they did last season, I think. So there we go. All right, next team. Might have to get a bit faster because there's 30 more teams to do. Okay, Patriots. James White's nice. Devontae Parker's nice. And they gave up barely anything. Oh, third rounder. Parker's a good player. Trent Brown, best offensive lineman in the NFL. You can look at my highlight tape on my channel of him. He's just an absolute monster. But knows what he's doing, which is the most important thing. Interesting that it could be $22 million maximum contract value, only $4 million guaranteed, because Trent Brown has missed a fair bit of snaps because of injuries and such. So interesting that they got him with pretty minimal guarantees. But when he's on the field, he's the best offensive lineman in the NFL. Mac Wilson is much, much better than Chase Winovich, so they won that trade easily. Mac Wilson's he's an above average linebacker in the NFL. The Browns really had like a rotating linebacker core. They brought in Anthony Walker to take Mac Wilson's snaps Mac Wilson and Sione Takitaki are from the same draft, and Mac Wilson's better, I think, but Takitaki got the snaps. But anyway, the it's when you sorry when I look at the depth chart for the Patriots. Oh yeah, this tool will show me who's on the roster too. That's cool. Um, you could really be harming your team if you bring in a player and then actually play them, depending on their talent level. So if I was the coach for the New England Patriots, I'd play Jonathan Jones, uh, probably Devin McCourty, Adrian Phillips. Jojuan Williams is probably their best DB. They got Jabril Peppers. Yeah. Okay, I'd play Peppers. But then there's a chance that they play a guy like Miles Bryant, Marcus Jones. Um, Terrence Mitchell is. I don't know how he's still in the league. Sorry, Terrence. Um, so yeah, bringing Terrence Mitchell and playing him would be disastrous for the Patriots, in my opinion. Um, I'm not sure. So I'll just assume that maybe he won't be the incumbent starter, um, but that could impact the grade for this team's off season. Nick Folk's not very good. He's like 40. I just don't understand. Like your hip flexors aren't going to be that supple at age 40. So how are you going to bang in 50 yarders consistently? Um, anyway. So that trade of Shaq Mason was interesting. I mean, the Patriots must have just identified that they could get some cheaper offensive line talent in the draft, and they did. They got a good player in Cole Strange, who's not that big of a downgrade from Shaq Mason, but Shaq Mason is a very good guard in the NFL. And I forget, this site won't give me the information on what the Bucks got, what the Patriots got for that trade. I think they got a fifth round pick or something, but I think they saved a whole bunch of money. But they didn't really spend it, did they? Or maybe they would just had to clear cap space from their ridiculous spending spree, which has really backfired already. Essentially, like, are any Patriots fans actually impressed with Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith? Like, they spent $20 million between those two guys on tight ends, and I don't think they were very big impact players for them. So I think they had to trade Mason just to afford like what they'd spent in the year prior, perhaps. Jamie Collins and Dante Hightower, and I'm pretty sure this site will list where they've gone once they leave, and those boys are great players. Like that's a above average linebacker core if you have them starting for you and they're unsigned. Again, this is based on 2020 evaluations. So maybe these guys I think they're maybe 30 years old or so, maybe they've regressed a bit. But when I evaluate them in 2020, which isn't that long ago, then they were great players. Carl Van Noy leaving to the Chargers. Yeah, he's a pretty good edge defender. JC Jackson. I don't think people understand how to evaluate cornerbacks because that dude just gives up position. Like, he lets people open. And a cornerback's primary job is to not let the receiver they're matched up against, their primary assignment, get the ball. And I feel like JC Jackson does that. It's just, I think he's really good at getting interceptions, but that could mean leaving assignments and having your eyes on the quarterback when you need to focus on your man and things like that. So JC Jackson got a huge payday by the Chargers, and it's probably going to be like a James Bradbury and Adoree Jackson situation where you've paid these guys absorbent amounts of money, and then you realize that they can't cover people. And then, the Giants are paying James Bradbury $10 million this year for him to play for someone else, like, because of the dead money. So it's silly. But the Patriots are not matching whatever the Chargers were offering. That's a win in itself. As for the draft, Cole Strange, good player. Tyquan Thornton is already a great receiver. So what will the receiving core be? It's looking pretty good in my Jacoby Myers, monster. He was I gave him a first round grade in the 2019 draft, and then he went undrafted. Lo and behold, he's probably the Patriots' best receiver last season, right? Um, Goes to show that maybe I know what I'm talking about when it comes to evaluations. But is Myers going to be way down the depth chart? What is going on here? They're probably there's a chance they pay Aguilar like $15 million to be like a fourth or fifth stringer because Kendrick Bourne's a great player. Devontae Parker they just traded for a third round pick for and paid him somewhat. Um, you've got to play Jacoby Myers. If you don't play Jacoby Myers, you're just like, well, yeah, screw you for producing. We're gonna play some more highly touted player who doesn't deliver as well as you. And then Thornton's better than Parker. He's better than Aguilar. For me, it should be Myers, Bourne, and Thornton. Um, so we'll see how that plays out. But Aguilar seems like the odd man out here. Not to mention Nikhil Harry. All right. Okay. So basically, I should give teams credit for re-signing players. Jabril Peppers will be a difference maker for them. Um, Trading Shaq Mason hurts. Letting those linebackers go. They drafted well. Should I give them an A? Man, this is thirsty work. Unfortunately, Marcus Jones, I'm not a huge fan of. Who they got in the draft. Yeah, look, they didn't really improve that much based on their additions. Like they kind of just their record isn't really going to be hugely impacted. Although Trent Brown playing more games will probably help. I'm going to give them a B because they could have gotten some great talent. They could have gotten some great talent in the off season, but they just didn't. Whether that's for financial reasons or whatever. I'm going to give them a B because they just didn't swing. What's the phrase? They didn't move the needle all that much. Sorry if that was not a great sound effect. All right. New York Jets, a team that I follow closely because they've been bad for so long. I like to think about what I would do if I was general manager of a team that's just been a cellar dweller for so long. And I don't, off the top of my head, they didn't do much to improve that status. Tyler Conklin's a good player. Laken Tomlinson got this big fat contract, and I'm afraid that some team, like I read in NFL news today that Frank Reich was just really wanted to bring in Nick Foles as a backup quarterback to Matt Ryan on the Colts, and of course Reich goes back a long way to Foles because Reich was the quarterback coach for Foles when Foles was the quarter Super Bowl winning quarterback for them in Philadelphia. So they're old buddies, but Foles is not an impact player, and they had like a god tier quarterback on their roster last season in Brett Hundley, who just got signed to the Ravens. I'm looking at myself speaking in OBS here. I should be looking at the camera. Um, uh, yeah. My point, the reason I bring this up is that Laken Tomlinson played for the 49ers, who were coached on defense by Robert Saleh, who is now the head coach of the Jets. So the coach wanted to bring in his old player, and that contract is they might have to. The Jets keep bringing in offensive linemen that they proceed to cut because if you look at the departures, Greg Van Roten was a big money guy, and they had to cut him. And I think people are pretty down on Connor McGovern, who they paid in the same offseason like $10 million a year, and he's not delivering. And they've done it again with Laken Tomlinson. He's not worthy of that contract. Sorry, Laken. Dan Feeney's not very good. Nathan Shepard is one of the best defensive players in the NFL. He's just been stuck behind guys like Quinn and Williams and Foley, Fatukasi. But again, I've got a Nathan Shepard highlight video on my channel, and he's just an absolute game wrecker. So I was just really looking forward to him maybe getting a chance somewhere else and then just balling out. But he's stayed with the Jets, so they see something in him. I don't know. I don't know how the rest of the league didn't identify him and say, okay, we need this dude. Okay, let's say Aaron Donald is worth $100 million a year based on my grading scale. Nathan Shepard is worth like $5 billion. That's how much better Nathan Shepard is compared to Aaron Donald, and everyone's just you know blowing smoke up Aaron Donald's ass. And he's a good player, but he's not. It doesn't really make a big impact on the game once the ball is away from the pocket. Like he is a jogger, in my opinion, and that's like the worst thing I can call you if you look at my evaluation of the draftees. If you're a jogger, you get an F grade. That's pretty much it. You can't jog on the football field. You cannot be that lazy. But Nathan Shepard certainly doesn't have that problem. Anyways, Jacob Martin is a very disruptive player on the edge. I love these like undersized edge rushers who are just so hard to block because they're so shifty and like stutter step moves and stuff. And he's one of those guys. If I'm talking about the same Jacob Martin, DJ Reed's a good player. He's about worth that contract. Obviously, when you're paying someone $33 million, though, you want to get a all pro level player, I think. So they're getting value for the contract, but they're not getting value above what they're paying him. So unless he improves dramatically over the offseason. But still a good pickup because the Jets desperately needed cornerback help. I mean, they had not really invested anything in their cornerbacks, but they got Ahmad Gardner in the draft, who was one of the best defensive players, if not one of the best players in the draft as cornerback. So this team is going to be improved on the defensive end from what I can see. Unfortunately, Zach Wilson's not very good. Patrick Mahomes' style of play has contributed to guys like Trey Lance, Zach Wilson getting drafted. And sure, they can run and they can throw on the run somewhat, even though that's a dangerous thing to do, just like Mahomes can. But they can't navigate a defense and find the open man with accuracy, which is really, I think, what the number one job of a quarterback should be. So Zach Wilson drafted second overall, and unfortunately, he's going to be have the same career impact as Sam Darnold, a previous Jets quarterback drafted in the top 3. So yeah, the ceiling on this team is capped by having faith in plays like that, I think. LaMarcus Joyner is a good player, and they got him back. Yeah, this defense is going to be nice, or at least the secondary is much improved. So shout out to them. They've had some elite kickers come through their club in the last few years. They had Sergio Castillo. He didn't get many opportunities and he did miss some field goals, but he's one of the best kickers in the league. I might have to do an explanation of how I evaluate kickers, because there is actually the difference between a great kicker and a bad kicker is obvious when in terms of mechanics and things like that. Zerline's not a good kicker. They were talking about benching him when he played for the Cowboys last year. So why are the Jets bringing him in when they had Sergio Castillo, Sam Ficken, and Alex Kessman, a draftee out of the 2021 draft? Not a draftee, but he came out then. They're all outstanding kickers, and they signed Greg Zuerlein, maybe because he's a big name. I don't think the special teams coach or anyone who had authority over that decision really understand what makes a great kicker, in my opinion. So that's, games can be won or lost based on the kicker, and that's not a good decision. Keelan Cole, one of the best receivers in the league, he leaves, and they didn't really give him that many opportunities because they're paying Corey Davis like $15 million a year, and Keelan Cole's like a million times better than him. Duvernay Tardif's a nice guard, and they gave him an opportunity after he left the Chiefs. But it'd be nice to keep him because he's better than all the incumbents at guard, I think. Morgan Moses, good player. He's left. So Fatukasi leaving, hopefully that means that Nathan Shepard gets more snaps. That would be great for them. Yeah. Uh, yeah. I'm gonna give them a C. This is a very meh off season because they gave big money. Like Azoma's not great. Berrios isn't that great. Like give Keelan Cole that money, he'll win you games single handedly. Um, uh, their backup quarterbacks are mediocre. Giving Tomlinson that contract is just silly in my opinion. They did get some good defenders. Oh yeah, the draft. Sorry. How far? We're 35 minutes in. Ahmad Gardner, monster. Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson, I don't even know if he even belongs on a college field. Sorry, but just he's going to bust hard. 10th overall pick. You can see my evaluation on him. Dude doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to get exposed at the next level. Jermaine Johnson, Brees Hall. They've got something to work from, but not. They got a lot of developing to do. Jeremy Ruckett's not very good. Yeah, that draft is woeful. Apart from Gardner, that was a great pick. But yeah, so having said all that, the Jets get a C. Just very meh off season. Some good decisions, bad decisions sprinkled in. Whew. Okay. Ravens. Morgan Moses. Yeah, the Ravens have a good offensive line coach. To be honest, like I'm such an outsider. I don't know how these decisions are made when it comes to like who gets to say, "Oh yeah, this is a great player. We need him." But whoever's just like bringing in Alejandro Villanueva last year for the Ravens was a great decision. Villanueva retired, and so in comes Moses, the savior. He'll be great there for them. Michael Pierce, good player. Calais Campbell, good player. Kyle Fuller, good player. Marcus Williams, not a good player. And they gave him 5 years, 70 million with 37 million guaranteed. And they let Deshaun Elliott walk. Deshaun Elliott, probably the best tackler in the NFL. Just a guy that offensive players fear because he can light you up. Marcus Williams, weak tackler. I think the Ravens might like him because he might be deemed as like this single high free safety so he can run around and protect deep balls. But I'm not, based on my evaluation of him, I don't think he was doing that well. That's going to bite them on the bottom. This could get an F grade for this offseason if they signed Williams to that contract and let Elliott walk without any other redeeming aspect. Because the rest of these decisions are pretty to me. Okay. So their backup running back is Mike Davis, who's nowhere near as good as Devontae Freeman or Latavius Murray. Didn't they? Oh, this is another example of like NFL teams just pandering to players or like being just favoritism. Marquise Brown, I think, was traded to the Cardinals for a first round pick, which for the Ravens is like just getting a first round pick back after taking Brown with a first round pick. Marquise Brown has delivered like fifth round pick value in his career. And that's like the most tangible evidence you can have. Like, how has a player done in the years since he was drafted? Marquise Brown has done nothing in the league and he got traded for a first round pick. I've got to check this. No, don't play that video. Should I have it outside of the window? Tell me, what did you trade for him? The Browns situation changed when he and a third round pick were sent to the Cardinals for the number 23 pick. So it's a third rounder in Brown for number 23. Okay. The Cardinals didn't get completely screwed there because they got a third round pick back. Okay, that's not so bad. But my point about favoritism is like the GM must have been like, well, Marquise Brown, he played with Kyler Murray at Oklahoma, so he might be able to replicate the success there at the NFL. Well, Is Marcus Brown a good player in the NFL? Kyler Murray is, though. He's a monster. Lost Sammy Watkins, lost Villanueva, lost Bradley Bozeman. Bozeman's like the most unheralded player in the NFL, but he came in the 2018 draft and he instantly started like as a fifth round pick and has done really well for himself. And the Panthers, I think, picked up some good players, and Bozeman is one of them. This could be an F for the Ravens. Lost Brandon Williams, he's a dominant defensive tackle. They lost Anthony Averett, great cornerback. And they lost Deshaun Elliott. And Sam Koch's a good punter and he retired. That is awful. Okay. No, they've redeemed themselves because they got Linderbaum, who's a good offensive lineman who will replace Bradley Bozeman. Um, it's still tempting to give them an F because Ajabo's not that great and Kyle Hamilton's downright bad. So, no, they got Kyle Fuller. They that losing to Sean Elliott, and the Lions paid to Sean Elliott. I think they've got him for like 1 year and like minimal amount of money, and he was a baller for the Ravens as like a former sixth round pick from the 2018 draft, which the Ravens just absolutely cleaned up. But now, okay, so the Ravens, I think their success in the last few years has been because of the 2018 draft, getting Deshaun Elliott, Bradley Bozeman. Lamar Jackson's overrated, but he's actually turned into a decent enough quarterback, I think. He's worked on some of his flaws a bit. Orlando Brown Jr. Did I mention Bradley Bozeman? They got like 5 starters from that draft. Mark Andrews. They got Mark Andrews in that draft. That draft is one of the best drafts of all time. But now Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson are the only guys remaining from there. So the Ravens might miss the playoffs this season. So is it harsh to give him an F? I'm giving him a D because they did get some decent defensive players. Giving him a D. All right, moving on. Okay, I'm going to speed this up because it's been almost 45 minutes and I've gotten through like 5 teams. Okay, Hayden Hurst, great player, much better than CJ Uzoma. So that's a huge win. How much did they pay La'el Collins? Tell us here. Because if La'el Collins starts over Isaiah Prince, the Bengals offense will suffer dramatically. Isaiah Prince is one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. I've got a highlight tape of him on my channel. They're paying him decent money. I'm going to just assume that Isaiah Prince just fights through after being a 7th round pick, getting cut by the Dolphins, and then finding himself at the Bengals. And then suddenly he starts in the latter half of last year and ends up pretty much. That was a big reason why I think the Bengals got to the Super Bowl because he shut down guys like Max Crosby. Who they play in the Super Bowl? Von Miller didn't really have a big impact on the Super Bowl, and he most likely would have been matched up across from Isaiah Prince. So Prince is worth like 15 million bucks, like top tier tackle money. That's based off of like real money, not my scale. He's worth every penny if he was paid top tackle money. But instead they bring in La'el Collins, who's a bigger name, but Collins is okay. But honestly, it would be such a sham if Prince gets benched for Collins. Seriously, Alex Kappa. Yeah, this might. I'm feeling an F coming on because they've given Alex Kappa huge money here, and he's significantly worse than Hakeem Adeniji, a guy that they drafted. They might find room for Adeniji and Prince in the starting lineup, like moving Jonah Williams around or, and Ted Car. Okay, yeah, this is an F. Ted Karras, awful, awful. They gave him huge money. BJ Hill, good player. Probably might be a bit of an overpay, but good player. Auden Tate's a good receiver. Jamar Chase, people are going to realize Jamar Chase ain't the guy. Sorry. Auden Tate was much better than him. Bengals used a 5th round pick on Chase, and They already had Auden Tate, who could have been that dominant third receiver alongside Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins. But no, they had to pick Chase. And if people think that what I'm saying is so outrageous and want to call me out for it, I welcome it. And if the hatred is bad enough, I will do a video to explain why I think what I think, and then I will be vindicated. Because it's pretty objective how good a player is, I think. Um, and I'm getting into a habit more of like using tape to back up what I say. Ogunjobi's a good player, and they lost him. What about the draft? Daxton Hill's okay. Taylor Britt's not good at all. Should I give him an F? Off with their head. Keeping Hill and Bates is nice, and they didn't really lose a player who got a lot of playing time and was a difference maker. Apart from Ogunjobi, I'm giving him an F. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's not acceptable. You can't evaluate Hakeem Adeniji and Isaiah Prince and go, yes, they are guys we need to replace, and they bring in Alex Kappa and Lael Collins. I mean, even their incumbent center, Trey Hopkins, is better than Ted Karras. So the Bengals might miss the playoffs again just because of these decisions. But getting Hayden Hurst is good. No, no. But then it all depends on what the coaching staff goes with. But no, they've allocated too much money to bad players. Yeah, Hayden Hurst isn't good enough to get him up to D status. Okay, I just gotta. Man, I drink water like it's going out of fashion, which it's not in Australia. It's raining perpetually here. Also, I realized before this stream started that there's no reason for me to have these headphones to listen to sound. I'm only using it for the mic, so I've got these annoying headphones on this whole time. I might invest in a mic that's like in front of my computer here. I just thought that was a funny thing. Like, there's no reason for me to be wearing headphones right now. All right, poor old Bengals. They had their time in this sun, and they might go back to. Although they're in the same division as the Browns, who had a horrific offseason off the top of my head. The Ravens, who got worse, and the Steelers, who are going to suck. So, yeah, actually, come to think of it, I think the Bengals will make the playoffs because they've got some serious talent at various places. But it's more to do with the teams in their division just doing really badly than it is with as opposed to the Bengals getting better. Okay, this is probably going to give me a headache talking about the Browns off season, and I do need to speed this up because this is getting ridiculous. Okay, Baker Mayfield is better than Deshaun Watson. Pardon me, but it looks like they're going to bench Mayfield and they bring in Watson. Aside from all the off-season issues, or all the off-the-field issues with Watson, they mortgage their future for this guy, and Baker Mayfield is better than him. I mean, do I even read it? I'll give you my thoughts on these players, but I think they are undoubtedly an F because they lost some of the best players in their league. The whole entire reason for the Browns doing well, they've just given it away in this offseason. Brissett's good. Amari Cooper's decent, but they lost Jarvis Landry, and I'm going to take into account the fact that they lost Odell Beckham Jr. too. But Jarvis Landry is probably the best player in the NFL, and they just cut him. I think did they even save some money? I don't know. This is just eye-wateringly bad. Shaquem Grant's a good player. David Njoku. Austin Hooper, they already paying Austin Hooper big money, and Austin Hooper is far superior to David Njoku. I'm going to sound like a whiny little kid with this, because this is just eye-wateringly bad. But then Chris Hubbard's good. Stephen Weatherly's good. That trade was awful. I brought that up prior. Anthony Walker's good. Why do teams double down on their decisions? The Browns picked Denzel Ward 4th overall, and now they're paying him top cornerback money. He's a meh cornerback. He's good. He's okay. He's not going to win you games. But this is, yeah. Rashad Higgins, great player. Jarvis Landry, best player in the NFL. Austin Hooper, above average tight end. He's gone. Mac Wilson, good player. Troy Hill, yeah, it's an F. It's an F, no question. Troy Hill, one of the best defenders in the NFL. He's gone. F. F. Whew. Oh, what do they do in the draft? Emerson's good. Martin Emerson's a good cornerback. Yeah. Alex Wright's not great. David Bell's not great. But still, that's one of the worst off seasons in recent memory. Considering that now they're paying Baker Mayfield like $18 million a year to sit on the bench when he's better than the guy they brought in, who they gave an obscene amount of money to and picks for, when he's not worth it. It just feels like there's some kind of systematically wrong thing with like NFL decision making for that to happen. Anyway. Okay. James Daniels, one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, and gosh, do they need it. That offensive line was not good last year. Jannard Avery did very good defensive end. Kyle Joseph's pretty good. Kalen Ballard's one of the best running backs in the league. So to not sign him and just leave him out in the streets, pretty stupid. Smith Schuster and Ebron are good offensive players. Taco Charlton's a good defensive player. People hate on him, but I think he's a good player. And did Marcus Allen, the safety, get re-signed? Yeah, I think he did. He's one of the best defensive players in the league, so I think they kept him. I don't know why it's not coming up on here, but yeah, that's pretty good. Now, Steelers could make the playoffs, or they could win like 2 games depending on who they play at quarterback. If they play Trubisky or Pickett at quarterback, then they will struggle to win many games. If they play Rudolph at quarterback, he's good enough to elevate them to the playoffs. Look at the highlight video that I put up from his tape against the Lions. Now, the Steelers lost against the lowly Lions, but I counted 9 drops that Rudolph threw to players, perfectly catchable balls, 9 drops. He was working with the worst receiving core I've ever seen in the NFL. So, and also the offensive line wasn't great. So, yeah. Again, quarterback play doesn't just happen in a vacuum. There's a variety of factors that impact play. Rudolph balled out, nearly carried his team to victory, but unfortunately his supporting cast just wasn't there. Right, the draft. Should I do this video in like 2 parts? Because I can do this. Alright, how long can I do this for? I can do this for another probably half an hour. I'll do this for another half an hour and then we'll evaluate where we stand after that. Alright. Pickett's decent, but Rudolph is See, I said Jarvis Landry's the best player in the NFL, but he's the best starting player in the NFL. If Mason Rudolph starts, he is the best player in the NFL. George Pickens not very good. DeMarvin Leal's not. Yeah, it's probably. I think I'm just gonna give them a B. I'm gonna give the Steelers a B because James Daniels is that good, and Jannard Avery is pretty good too. Yeah, we'll just go with that. Okay. Texans. Texans have done a really good job of not committing huge amounts of money to mediocre players, apart from Brandon Cooks. That's disgusting. Um, they've just picked up like Kamu Grugier Hills was a good pickup for them in the last off season, and like he was a ended up doing really well for them. Good linebacker, and they're not just committing too much to any one player, I think, and it's working well for them, even though their record was pretty bad last year. It's just like a conservative approach and just giving decent underrated players small contracts and see how it goes. I think that's a decent approach rather than mortgaging or rather than like handicapping yourself by giving a player exorbitant amounts of money and then not being able to get out of it. Um, um, okay, so Marlon Marlon Mack, good running back. Deshaun Hamilton's the real prize here. Deshaun Hamilton is worth the Brandon Cooks contract. When I evaluated Brandon Cooks, I just gave him just like a league average grade. It's just he's not in the upper echelon of receivers, and yet he gets $36 million guaranteed over 2 years. Yeah, they have a lot of transactions. Steven Nelson's a good player. They got a good cornerback here. Losing David Johnson's a silly move. And didn't they get memed on for trading DeAndre Hopkins, who is the real deal, one of the best receivers in the league, for David Johnson and some picks? Like these teams tend to double down on decisions. Like if they draft a guy high and they'll just re-sign him or whatever, but they often let guys go who actually don't deserve to be like Johnson. He's a very, very good running back. Okay, so yeah, Jacob Martin played for the Texans last year, and he's a great player. And he so I'm talking about the right Jacob Martin. He's going to do well for the Jets, I think. Um, yeah, this is just seems like a C because if Deshaun Hamilton gets a lot of playing time and people see how good he is as one of the best offensive players in the league, then the offseason will be redeemed. But this is the draft. I keep forgetting that. At the end of the day, the draft doesn't. The benefits of drafting a player often come to fruition many years in advance. I think the Texans are going to regret picking Stingley over Gardner because Gardner's the far superior player. Kenyon Green's a very, very good offensive lineman, so I'm a huge fan of that. It's not going to bump him up to B, but it's the Texans definitely C because Jalen Petrie's John Mechie. I gave them both F grades. Christian Harris, though, he's a great player. They drafted really well. But still, yeah, I'm gonna give them a C because look, this is very rough because I can't be spending too much time on each team to the point of like breaking them down to within an inch of their life. Is that is Ogboni Okoronkwo the guy who played for the Rams last season? Yeah. Okay, he's outstanding. Okay, I'm giving the Texans a B because of their draft, and they added Okoronkwo, Steven Nelson, kept Grugier Hill, Blake Cashman's decent, Deshaun Hamilton's great, but they gave Brandon Cooks that money. Marlon Mack's good. I'm giving him a B. All right. Okay, the Colts. See, I should give the Colts an F for letting they don't even list him, I don't think, for letting Brett Hundley go. But I won't because Brett Hundley didn't even get to play a snap for the Colts last season. I mean, they're not paying Matt Ryan his full contract because the Falcons have to foot the bill. They gave a third round pick for Matt. Matt Ryan's old. He's not good anymore. If he was good at all, I haven't evaluated him in his prime. But the dude's 40 years old. He can't move. I think if you're playing pro sports, you should be able to move. And he can barely move. Same with Nick Foles. Philip Lindsay. One man wrecking ball. But he's going to play behind Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, most likely. So that doesn't move the needle too much unless he gets to actually play. Looks like they're going to play Matt Pryor, who's just not great. The Colts actually did well to trade Rock Ya-Sin because he's one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL from what I saw. And Ngakwe's okay. Zaire Franklin, true underrated monster. I just wish he could play in front of Darius Leonard and Bobby Okereke because he'll wreck you. And I've got a highlight tape of him up on my channel. And they got Gilmore. Oh, that flew under the radar for me. Yeah, this is looking like a B based on what I've seen here. But Carson Wentz is decent. I mean, he's definitely not MVP caliber, but he's decent. He's better than Matt Ryan, better than Nick Foles, no question. Marlon Mack wasn't playing much, but see, Jonathan Taylor is highly touted and he's a good player, but the Colts already had Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines, and so drafting Taylor in the second round, I just feel like just allocate that to a position. Like the Colts secondary is not good. Who do they have at cornerback apart from Gilmore now? You know, don't be using picks on players at positions that you're already decent at. T.Y. Hilton's unsigned, is he? Jack Doyle retired. Davenport was a good player. He's gone to the Bears. Who did the Colts have at cornerback? Gilmore, Kenny Moore. I don't know why people are on lauding him so much for his slot cornerback play. Again, I might have made a mistake in my evaluations and gotten people confused or something like that. But Kenny Moore, from memory, is just whatever, just not an impact player. They're gonna play Isaiah Rodgers at cornerback, I think, and yeah, this team is not that much improved. And Alec Pierce, Jelani Woods is a good tight end. So no, Jack Doyle is. They haven't replaced Jack Doyle sufficiently at tight end. Jelani Woods is a good player, but nowhere near on Doyle's level yet. I wonder if they're going to play Raymond at tackle because they lost Eric Fisher, who was the designated left tackle, and Julian Davenport played there as well. Do they sign? If they play Matt Pryor at left tackle, then they're asking for Matt Ryan to be like sent to the hospital. Sorry, Matt. Both Matts. Sorry, both Matts. Okay, they got Gilmore, big time player. They kept Zaire Franklin, got Philip Lindsay. But remember, they lost Brett Hundley and Carson Wentz, who are better. This is a D, I think. It's not an F because they have some redeeming qualities with who they picked up, but I think they're missing the playoffs again. Because that defense, the defense got Gilmore now. But they lost some players. T.Y. Hilton was like the go-to receiver for so long. Yeah, it's a D. All right. Jaguars. I mean, Warren Sharp likes to get in his high horse a bit and sort of it has like a holier than thou kind of vibe, I feel. Um, like I know what I know best. And maybe I come across like that, but um to Sharp's credit, it's awesome him bringing up some raw data that exposes some teams. I think the Jaguars have spent more in free agency than any other team in the last decade or whatever, and their record has been, I think, the worst in the league. And they've done it again. Zay Jones, 24 mil. Eh. Christian Kirk's a good player, but like I think people were rightfully shocked that the Jaguars paid this much money for him. Evan Ingram's okay. Yeah, so Evan Ingram, one of the best tight ends in the league. I know he's been criticized by Giants fan, and maybe that's to do with how high he was drafted. I think he was like high in the first round, but he's a he's the man. And poor old Daniel Jones is probably gonna might have a worse season than last year with Ingram gone. But I think you got to give Daniel Jones credit. He's fought a lot of adversity, considering that people just meme on him a lot. Well, not that much adversity because he was 6 overall pick and stuff. But he's turned into one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, I think. Anyways, we're on the Jaguars. Cam Robinson's not worth that, I'm afraid. I think they had a player called Will Richardson, who this website might say that they lost. Will Richardson is like 3 times the player that Cam Robinson is, but Robinson has had to mostly sit on the bench, and Robinson has been able to play because Robinson was a high pick and Richardson wasn't. So that's unfortunate. Brandon Scherf's good, but you're not getting value above his contract with that. So that's troublesome because with that, like as soon as a player gets injured and they're being paid like about their value, if they get injured or they just have a rough game or two, then team will still start thinking, okay, we can't afford this guy because we're not getting value above what we're paying him. And so like a lot has to go right for the Jaguars to get the value that they are paying Scherf for here, I think. Good player, but they're paying him so much that if he gets injured, then you're not getting your value, right? Arden Key, one of the best defensive player in the league. 1 year deal worth up to 7 mil. That's a great contract. I like that. But the Jaguars have got this tactic of just throwing so much mud at the wall and hoping it sticks. And it's going to stick somewhere, but the Aluakon contract is diabolical. Darius Williams contract. Darius Williams, I don't know. It's surprising that the Rams even won the Super Bowl with a guy like Darius Williams covering like the Bengals receivers and the teams that the Rams played prior. Because Darius Williams just lets guys get inside of him and just lets players just run. He just gets beaten all the time. And the Jaguars are paying him 10 mil a year. So basically, Arden Key and Evan Ingram are the only players here that they brought in that will deliver above what they're being paid. Assuming that Arden Key even gets snaps, because he'll be playing behind like Josh Allen and Clavon Chason and other guys. I think did the no, they got Trayvon Walker, who's not even an impact player too. So Arden Key might not even get to play much, even though he's like the prize of their free agent haul. So there's that. But other than that, like they're not getting value for money. Like it's based on their additions, it's probably a D. Jacob Hollister was great for the Seahawks, and I thought he'd do really well for the Jaguars because they needed tight end help. And but he's gone, and I don't think he got that much opportunities. Brandon Linder retiring, sucks for them. But from memory, they drafted a player with similar ability to him in the draft in Luke Fortner. He's a good player, so they're not going to see a huge drop off at center, I don't think. Yeah, they didn't lose too much, and like I said, they got Fortner. Chad Mummer's not very good, I don't think. Devin Lloyd is, I gave him a D grade in the draft. Trayvon Walker's got a C grade. I'm giving them a D because they've gave out some contracts that are gonna really hurt them in future years, but they did bring in some good players too. All right, Titans. Austin Hoop. Okay, yeah, they haven't had a good tight end for many years, even though people think Jono Smith is good. And I didn't ever actually evaluate Delaney Walker when he was with the Titans, but they haven't had a good impact player at tight end, and Dawson Hoop is going to be that man. So great job there. Ben Jones, one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, so they got him back. Jamarco Jones, outstanding offensive lineman, was literally the Seahawks' best offensive lineman, I think, the last few years, and they didn't play him, and they let him go to the Titans. So whoever's making decisions as to who the Seahawks should be starting at offensive line, really doing a bad job. And they've been memed on for it for many years for making Russell Wilson just run around the pocket or just run around so much because their offensive lines might be good. And it's but they've had decent players like Jamarco Jones there, so silly. Harold Landry, same situation as Brandon Scherf. The Titans are assuming Harold Landry plays every game for them over the next few years. They're about getting the value on that contract. But what's weird is that there's a player from the 2019 draft who plays the same position as Landry in Derek Roberson on the Titans. And Derek Roberson is like 10 times better than Landry. But Landry was picked in the first round, and I think Derek Roberson might have been undrafted or something like that. So they give the big money to Landry, even though they should be giving the big money to Roberson. So that's a bit of an L, I think. Ugh. The Titans dodged a meteor-sized bullet by not paying AJ Brown what the Eagles are about to pay him. AJ Brown, replaceable guy, absolutely. Um, and the Eagles just are paying him like 20 mil a year or something. So that's disastrous for them. And the Titans picked up the best receiver in the first 3 rounds of the draft in Treylon Burks. So the Titans are about to improve at receiver. Well, like as in like Burks is much better than AJ Brown, and they got a pick for Brown, and they didn't pay him obscene amounts of money. So great work there. But losing Julio Jones sucks, even though they I don't think there's any dead money with cutting him though, so it's not a huge deal. But Julio Jones is Julio Jones. Like he's a one of the best receivers in the league still, I think. Um, this website isn't even going to say, but is Cameron Batson on a roster? He's a free agent. Do teams even watch every player? Like, do they get a grade on every player? Because yeah, Cameron Batson hasn't had all that many opportunities, and unfortunately, the coaching staff of the Titans don't know how to evaluate their receivers because they'll give playing time to like Westbrook Akina and stuff when Cameron Batson is like imagine like he's everything Tyreek Hill can do, but he can block better, he plays harder, um, and is just better as a receiver overall. Like imagine like Cameron Batson is like Steve Smith, like the legendary undersized receiver. He's kind of like that. Like imagine if you have an impact player like Steve Smith on your team, but they just had him on the bench, and they didn't even give him good return duties because they had Chester Rogers giving him duties, return duties. So just really bad evaluation there. Losing Roger Saffold is a major L, and who'd they get? Petit Frere is one of the worst tackles in the draft. Like, you watch him play, and he thinks he doesn't have to do anything beyond like 2 seconds. Like, he'll initially block a guy decent enough, and then he'll just let the guy run past and hurt his quarterback, which is just inexcusable, I think. So they got Burks. Other than Roger McGreary, I mean, I memed on him in my top 45 draft pick video because he's going to do some. He's just got Shackton a fool moments all the time based on like you'll think that he's guarding one guy and then he'll just switch at the last second to some other guy, leaving his teammate just completely confused. So they must have drafted him based on his physical ability or something because his play smarts is just not where it needs to be. And the Titans have got Breon Borders, an outstanding cornerback, on their roster, and they have for a long time, but he's on the bench behind very mediocre players. So the Titans probably could have won a Super Bowl by now because they had the best offensive line in the league. Derrick Henry's pretty good, decent enough receivers. They shouldn't have paid Tannehill what they did. But he's okay. They might have gotten further in the playoffs if they had have just played the right guys because they had the talent on the roster, but the coaching staff just didn't put the best players on the field. I don't think Robert Woods is not that great, and they're paying him big money, and they traded a 6th-round pick for him. So, what's for the fun? Let's see. Who is going to play at receiver for them? Robert Woods, Traylon Burks. They're guaranteed to play, and then it'll be like Westbrook, probably, based on last year. How does no team pick up Cameron Batson? Makes my eyes water. Ryan Izzo's good. He'll probably be 3rd-string tight end. Anyway. This is a C, I think. Yeah, it's a C because they did okay in the draft by getting Burks, and they kept some of their good guys. But they lost some. They lost Jones and Saffold, and picked some downright bad players in the draft. So C, we need to. Maybe I'm OCD, but it's like shouldn't most teams be in the C bracket? Like most teams would have done meh, but that's not necessarily the case. That's just me being a bit. How you going? All right. We're doing all right. I'm feeling all right. I've gotten some feedback from my trusting viewers that maybe I should go longer than what I said I would. So we'll see how we go. I might just like settle into this. And like Legend of Total War streams 6 hours straight, and I don't think he even gets up from his chair. So if he can do it, then I can do a few hours, surely. All right, Broncos. This will be very interesting because they clearly upgraded at quarterback. They got one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but they gave up the best defensive tackle in the NFL in Shelby Harris. They gave up a top 10 tight end in Noah Fant and heaps of picks. So Drew Lock's just whatever. Drew Lock's a great athlete at quarterback. Can't throw. And that's pretty crucial for a quarterback play to be able to throw. So move him to receiver, and he'd be pretty good because he does have the ability to make people miss and run through guys with the ball in his hands, but he can't throw, so it's problematic. And I think the Seahawks might start him at quarterback. It's a battle between him and Geno Smith. Um, yeah, so that's a lot of value lost just to get Russell Wilson. So I'd probably give that trade a D just on its own because it's such a like seismic shift, that move. It's a D because Russell Wilson, yes, outstanding player, but they gave up some outstanding players and obscene amounts of picks for him. So yeah, Randy Gregory, best defensive end in the NFL, and I'm so happy to see a guy like that actually get paid. So um, yeah, great job there. One of my viewers, my father, just said, in reference to Legend of Total War streaming for like 6 hours straight, he said, maybe the legend pees in a bottle like some truck drivers. You know, just driving along, whip out the old fella. That's better than having to stop your big rig and then get back in and get back on the road. But I don't think Legend does that. He has had bathroom breaks, but he is kind of freakish with like what he can tolerate of just sitting there for so long. My old man drives trucks, so he knows all about it. But I think that's a I think it goes on. Truck drivers pissing into bottles. I'm not sure if my father partakes in that. Anyway, all right. I don't know what DJ Jones did to get such a big deal. Like, who is who? I mean, obviously, like media attention shouldn't relate to what a value of a player is, but $30 million for a player over 3 years. But do even like fans of the 49ers know how good DJ Jones is? Like, just that's a weird deal to me. I guess they're trying to replace the loss of Shelby Harris because Shelby Harris is known as this run stuff, excellent run stuffer, which he is, but he's more than that. So maybe they're just replacing like I think DJ Jones might have a similar body type. So they're like, oh yes, kind of like Shelby Harris, but yeah, he's that's too large of a contract, I think. All right, they lost Teddy Bridgewater, lost Deshaun Hamilton, lost Noah Fant. Cam Fleming's decent at tackle. Bobby Massey's good at tackle, and they lost him. Stephen Weatherly was kind of like was there very briefly, so losing him might not seem like a big deal. Lost Shelby Harris. Lost Kyle Fuller. Mm, not looking good for the boys in orange. Yeah. Nick Bonino, not good. Dolchich, not good. Yeah, that's rough. They got Gregory. That's hugely redeeming. Deshaun Hamilton wasn't really playing that much for them, and he did get injuries, Achilles. But I like to think that players just restore their value because it's more than just like raw athletic ability that dictates the value of a player. It's also like what's in their head and how they process the game. And he's a pro athlete, and if he's so good, he's probably going to rehab well. This is all not backed up by science or anything, but I think the better the player you are, the more adversity you've gone through in your life to get to where you are, and therefore, if more adversity shows itself, you will be able to get through it um, easier. And so I think he'll come back from like an Achilles rupture or whatever just fine, but we'll see. I'm gonna give this off season a C because Randy Gregory's just he's gonna wreck people's business. And hopefully he replaces Bradley Chubb because that dude just I've actually picked up on Bradley Chubb kind of being dirty. Like, I think just like being rough with guys like after the whistle and things like that. So I don't like to see that unless it's kind of called for. And he's just not a very good player, and I don't think. And I think Randy Gregory actually will probably line up opposite him, but Bradley Chubb's got drafted second overall and has done pretty much nothing with his career, and has been injured a lot. So anyway, um, might he might be a great person off the field, but on the field he's not very good, and he doesn't treat people the right way, I think. Anyway, so yes, Broncos C. So therefore, like, I don't think their record will really change much, but the quarterback is such a focal point. Improving the quarterback situation might just mean that they can make the playoffs again because he's going to touch the ball every single time. Whereas, like, a receiver might be a dominant player, but they might not get the ball for like almost the whole game. So, yeah, I'm interested to see that because based on the talent loss, the Broncos should be worse, but obviously quarterback is a premium position, so they'll probably make the playoffs. And who have they got up against? The Chiefs are going to be tough. The Raiders will be okay. The Chargers will be tough. Yeah, I don't see the Broncos making the playoffs against the guys they're up against, but we'll see. We'll see. Whew. All right, how are we going here? Sorry if this hurts your eyes scrolling like this, but still a lot of teams to go. All right. We looked at the draft for them, didn't we? Yeah. Kansas City Chiefs. Awful. Awful. The Chiefs are paying Justin Reed what they should be paying Tyrann Mathieu, like the incumbent. Tyrann Mathieu's great player. Justin Reed, awful player. What did they see in him when they had Mathieu already? And I think Mathieu came out and said that he would have accepted the contract that the Chiefs offered Justin Reed. What the hell has Justin Reed done to deserve that? They got some picks, but they didn't use them well. They got some picks for Tyreek Hill. Trent McDuffie's a good player. Kalafdis is a jogger, so therefore an F, not a good player. Sky Moore, Brian Cook, F. I think I gave him an F. Leo Chanel, a C grade. So he's They didn't use their picks great. Was that good English? They didn't use their picks that well. Byron Pringle's alright. Mike Hughes is one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and they let him go to the Lions on a cheap deal. So the Chiefs, yeah, I think the Chiefs might miss the playoffs because it's really just Travis Kelce left. Mahomes is good, but Travis Kelce is the absolute man. It's Travis Kelce, Orlando Brown, um, Juan Thornhill's good, Frank Clark's great. Yeah, they've got some players, but they've got some big holes, and they're giving out huge contracts to Valdez Scantling, who's what is that? Yeah, he's a deep threat, but who cares if you can run faster than everyone else when your quarterback's getting sacked because you don't get open quickly? I'm leaning towards an F because getting Brown back's nice, but they lost a lot, and yeah, it's an F. Yeah, F. F. Are there Fs in the chat? No. All right. Las Vegas Raiders. huge overpay. I just don't understand how a quarterback can have one season and then he's worth like more than some small African country. Like he gets paid more than like the GDP of a small country. Maybe I'm exaggerating there, but Derek Carr is worth about 15 mil a year, and that we're looking at like 40 mil a year there. So just no, stop it. Devontae Adams is an above average receiver, but I think he's just been dominating in against some mediocre competition. Now I'm basing that off of who the Packers who what division the Packers are in. Not necessarily. I haven't looked at like the schedule of the Packers in recent years and be like, oh yeah, Adams and Rodgers are beating up on bad opposition. But when you think about the cornerbacks that Adams might have had to beat over the years, we've got the Lions who haven't had any marquee players. The Bears, like Kyle Fuller might have been their best cornerback, and Adams is like better than him, right? They might not even lined up across each other. Um, so Lions, Bears, and Vikings, and the Vikings haven't had. They've had good cornerbacks at times, but they let Mike Hughes go. They haven't played Chris Boyd enough. So and Rodgers have been able to beat up on some pretty mediocre secondaries. So I think that's elevated Devontae Adams' numbers up, and therefore like his prestige in the NFL community. Giving up a first and second, and then giving him $28 million a year. That's an F. That's an F. In the short term, it might be okay because Adams is a good player, but like Hunter Renfro is better than him. On my grading scale, Devontae Adams is worth about $20 million a year, when the average NFL player is worth $10 million a year, and the best players are worth billions of dollars a year. So to give Adams all that's an F in my book. Absolute F. The Packers got away with one there, and maybe time will tell. But they again, they could have just been content with picking up Keelan Cole because Keelan Cole is the man and deserves that kind of money, in my opinion. Also Hollister went to the Raiders. All right. Max Crosby is being paid that much despite being shut down by Isaiah Prince in the wildcard round, the playoffs. Isaiah Prince, the right tackle for the Bengals. Prince looks like he's going to be benched, and Crosby's been rewarded with this contract. Crosby's a good player. Again, he's probably got the same impact on the game as Devontae Adams, but I just think there's so much better players out there that to give that kind of money to a guy who's not just like an absolute game wrecker is unwise. Chandler Chandler Jones upheld as a great edge defender, and I wasn't that impressed with him. He's about league average, I thought. Bilal Nichols is the man at defensive tackle, and they got Quinton Jefferson, but they haven't really had a great defensive tackle for a while. Nichols is going to really improve that defense. That's a very great pickup. I love that. Anthony Averett, very good player. We'll see if he gets some playing time. See, there's so many DBs on teams that I often forget like who's actually going to play. Averett, Trayvon Mullen will play. They play Rocky Sin. They messed up. Mick Robinson's not very good. Yeah, this team's just. All right, and we'll see if Keelan Cole gets some playing time. I just want Keelan Cole to get some playing time, man. Undrafted, balled out for the Jaguars, but probably didn't get enough playing time there either. Was behind a lot of Jets players who were either picked high or paid a lot of money, so Keelan Cole's not going to get the playing time, you just want to see like a guy like that who's that dominant and that like undervalued for so long in his career. You just want him to have a breakout. Adams and Renfro will play a lot. Yeah, I think Cole can beat out Mac Hollins, but maybe they'll just play Demarcus Robinson, and they might go with they'll play Moreau and Waller together a lot, which means that third receiver won't be there. They might play. The Raiders seem to love their fullbacks just based on them playing Alec Ingold a lot, so they might play Jacob Johnson a lot too, which means that Cole will get less playing time. But yeah, Keelan Cole's good enough to contribute to 1 or 2 wins per season by himself, I think. They lost Ingold. So they did really well to bring in good linebackers in Kwiatkowski and Littleton in the 2020 offseason, I think. And while those guys, I think they might have had some injury problems or like it hasn't worked out great, but that's one of the best linebacking combo in the NFL, I think, Kwiatkowski and Littleton. And they're both gone. And from memory, I don't think they really replaced him with many good players, losing Casey Hayward. Have I been calling the Raiders Oakland? That'll probably happen for a long time. Oh yeah, the Raiders gave up all their picks, and Dylan Parham, I think I gave him an F or D. Like I wasn't impressed with him. So, with that being said, I suppose I should look at the dead money. 8 million dead money for Yannick Ngakoue, so they could trade him for Rock Ya-Sin, who's worse. Yeah, I think I don't feel any which way about this offseason for them. There's a lot going on here. Overpay, overpay, great value, about equal value, overpay, great value, great value. It's looking like a C, I think. Yeah, I'll just give him a C because their draft was I don't know what the rest of these guys are like, but that draft was um didn't move the needle at all, and they lost some good players, but they let some mediocre players walk too. So it's a C for them. All right, Los Angeles Chargers. I think, based on what I've seen from them, like they made some dumb moves, but they've made some excellent moves. They could win the Super Bowl. I think they've got the quarterback. Justin Herbert's awesome, and they've patched some holes. Like they picked how we going with the stream? Oh, good. We picked Zion. They picked Zion Johnson, who is already a great offensive lineman at the age of 22, and he'll plug in at left guard, I think, and he'll do great. I don't think JT Woods is good, but I actually haven't got a definitive grade on Isaiah Spiller, but from memory, he is a dominant running back too. So I don't really remember. Like Austin Eckler is okay, but I don't think he's gonna be that much of a difference maker for them at running back. Yeah, they haven't really got any dudes on this roster who will actually like break a game open at running back. Isaiah Spiller could be that guy, so that's exciting. And they got Gerald Everett, one of the best tight ends in the league. Sebastian Joseph Day, and they've had some big troubles at defensive tackle, and he's great. So, the Rams have been loaded at defensive tackle, like Aaron Donald, Sebastian Joseph Day, Greg Gaines, who I gave a first round grade on in the 2019 draft, and he's ended up starting, even though he was like a 5th round pick or something like that. So, yeah, again, I know how to identify undervalued talent. He's been playing behind guys and also playing behind like Ashawn Robinson, Michael Brockers, but he's the real deal. He deserves that contract. Khalil Mack, he's they didn't. I'd give this trade probably a well, it's a great value trade because they didn't give up too much for him. But it's just that they let Uchenna Nwosu go, who isn't quite as good as Mac, but he's younger and holds like kind of similar value. So not like that's a B trade considering they let Nwosu go. That's a B trade to me. They got Van Noy. I spoke about the JC Jackson contract when talking about the Patriots, and that is a huge mistake that will cost them hugely. So unfortunately, they haven't had that consistency of good decisions. Josh Harris, I think he played for the Falcons, and he's a good long snapper. And yes, I evaluated long snappers and punters and kickers. All right, I must have poured thousands of hours into evaluating all these guys. Maybe not thousands, maybe not NFL players thousands, but considering draftees since 2018 that I've evaluated, I've poured thousands of hours into evaluating these players. So, um, I think I deserve a spot somewhere in football decision making, scouting or coaching. Anyway, Dustin Hopkins, good kicker. And let's see who they lost. Jared Cook. Come on, you could get him for like 3 or 4 mil, and he's awesome. Great tight end. He's like LeBron James on the field. Like he's clearly the most physically dominant dude. Like he's freak. He looks like bloody Master Chief out there. He's got the physique. He's like 35 now, but he can still play well. Um, but yeah, they got Gerald Everett, and they got uh who's the really tall tight end who got knocked out? My goodness, Donald Parham. Donald Parham's a great player. And so him and Gerald Everett, that's going to be a great combination. I think the Chargers could win the Super Bowl. For real. And Parham I gave him a first round grade, and I think he went undrafted, but lo and behold, he's carved out a place in the NFL. Which isn't enough evidence to say he's a great player, because a lot of bad players carve out a place in the NFL, but I could put that in my resume that I was like, yeah, Parham is like elite player coming out of the draft, and he's proven to be a very good player in the NFL. All right. Yeah, losing Nwosu is not great. Losing Kaiser White, I mean, the Eagles didn't even pay White all that much, but like the Chargers let him go. That's silly. But they got Johnson. I'm going to give him an A. Great job. They might be my Super Bowl favorites, but what's that secondary looking like? Because I think they've got the offensive line figured out. I'm not a huge Corey Linsley fan, but Filer, Johnson, and Pipkins, but they might not play Pipkins because Storm Norton's might be the right tackle. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. Linsley, yeah, I'm not a huge fan. He's being paid heaps of money, but they got enough strength on the offensive line for the first time in a while, and they've got the weapons. They got the quarterback. If Isaiah Spiller gets some snaps at running back, that'll be awesome. Yeah, I think they're contenders for sure. Nice. Okay, Cowboys. Unfortunately, because they're paying like bad players obscene amounts of money, they couldn't do much in the off season. But this is where just overpaying guys bites you in the bottom. Because Dak Prescott is one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL. It's only because he's had good receivers and an outstanding offensive line generally his whole career that he's been able to put up the numbers he has. And also playing against the Giants, who have a bad secondary, the Eagles, who have have historically had a pretty mess secondary, and the Commanders have had an alright secondary. But all sorts of factors contribute to Prescott putting up big numbers, but at the end of the day, he doesn't know. He just preliminary, just little scouting report. He's a statue in the pocket, doesn't sense pressure. Um, yeah, I'll have to do a Dak Prescott breakdown video because it's glaring to me that he's not very good. But I can see like he's got a good throwing motion, and he can run reasonably fast and stuff. But he's just too prone to like getting strip sacked. You can't have that. Like ball security is number one, and he throws bad picks, and yeah, it's just not a great player. Cooper Rush is much better than him. Cooper Rush is on 1 mil a year. Prescott's on, well, I think it averages out to like 40 mil a year. So that's going to hold back the Cowboys a lot. But I like what they do because they drafted an outstanding player in Tyler Smith, who is like a generational talent at offensive line. And Jalen Tolbert's a great receiver. So they do some good things, but they commit too much to their guys, I think, is a problem. And they should have. Randy Gregory and Dorrance Armstrong is the best edge defender combo in the NFL by far, but they let Randy Gregory go and they've recommitted to DeMarcus Lawrence. Now, I think this reduces his cap hit this contract, but DeMarcus Lawrence isn't an impact player, I don't think. So that's poor decision making, in my opinion. But that in the first 3 rounds, the Cowboys won the draft, I think, because Smith and Tolbert are both great. Smith particularly so. So that they've got that going for them. Mark Gallup, good player. It's a lot of money, but I think it'll be worth it overall. Schultz, probably not worth a franchise tag, but he's okay, slightly above average. Dante Fowler, good player. Yeah, so it's not a huge. Losing Randy Gregory is always going to hurt, but Fowler will do okay. I mean, it seemed like they were close to letting Van Der Esch go because they brought in Micah Parsons and we're just talking about, and Van Der Esch has had injury issues, so it looked like they might have let him walk, but he's one of the best linebackers in the NFL, so keeping him will be great. It's a bit of a feather in my cap to highly rate Malik Hooker. I mean, I know he was drafted high, but then his Colts career didn't really go to plan, and the Colts let him, they cut him. I thought he was one of the best safeties in the NFL prior to the last offseason, and I said so in a video that I made. I think it was like underrated free agents in the 2021 NFL offseason, if you want to check that out. Put up some Hooker tape to show that he's still like a nightmare at safety. Like, he can cover well and also just blow you up, tackling you. And he ended up being like the rock for that Cowboys secondary that they desperately need because that secondary's not been good for a long time, I feel. And they've rewarded him with a decent contract, so that's great. Even though they're paying him way less than the, well, not way less, but they're paying this guy more, and he's not the man. Sorry, J-Ron. Jake McQuaid's actually not a very good long snapper from memory, so that's not great. And yeah, I don't think the special teams coach really knows what they're doing based on these evaluations because they have Hunter Nicewinder, who is one of the best punters in the NFL. They had him on the roster, giving him snaps and stuff, but I think they cut him in favor of Brian Engar, who's really old and not good. So that's very bad decision making. They did well. Oh, I wonder what pick they used the Amari Cooper from the Amari Cooper trade, because they're playing 4D chess if they traded Cooper for Jalen Tolbert. Jalen Tolbert's like probably a little bit better than Cooper, way younger and like insanely cheaper. Let's look at the dead money for the Cowboys. Not too bad, 6 mil for Amari Cooper. That's not too bad. So I think yeah they did well to. They're not going to see a drop off at receiver. Unfortunately, CD Lamb is probably the most overrated player in the NFL. So, but guys like Gallup and Tolbert should pick up the slack, I think. But Yeah, they this offseason was not good for them. It might be an F because losing Connor Williams, I mean, they just can't afford the guys because they're paying other dudes so much. Like, look, pouring no resources into the secondary. They got some rookie contracts here. Great job. Did they list getting Dorrance Armstrong back? Yeah, this website forgot to mention Dorrance Armstrong, but he's awesome. Again, picked in the mid rounds. I thought he should have been a first round pick. Um, they should have traded Tyron Smith a long time ago because he's getting old and he's just not very effective. I honestly would have traded Tyron Smith. You could have gotten a first round pick for him like last offseason probably and moved Connor Williams to left tackle. Then you'd have Williams, Connor McGovern, Biadish, Zach Martin, and Lyle Collins. That's probably the best offensive line in the NFL. But instead they stuck with Smith and didn't play McGovern all that much. And then they played like Brandon Knight at tackle and he's not good. Or Terrence Steele at tackle as well. He's not good. So they have good players on their roster, but they haven't used them to as much as they could have, I thought. Getting Tyler Smith is going to be huge. And Ezekiel Elliott is one of the best running backs in the NFL. So that running game's still going to be like insane. And Tony Pollard is outstanding as well. He could be a number one back anywhere in the league and hold his own. Ryan Nall's a very good player. I hope he gets some snaps, whether it be running the ball or playing at fullback or whatever. I hope TJ Vasher gets some snaps. TJ Vasher is one of the best receivers in the NFL. Had a great college career early, but then had some various troubles, and went undrafted. But he has the talent. He had the talent to make the Cowboys roster, and he has the talent to dominate the NFL. So we'll see if that happens, but it might be an uphill battle because he's playing behind a fair few more highly touted players. But it happens. Talent can win out. Well, you'd like to think so. Because sport should be a meritocracy. The best players should be on the field, not you know, not their draft status, not how much money they're on, not the relationship with the coaches that they have. Best players should be on the field. So outstanding draft. They kept some of their good players. They lost Connor Williams and Randy Gregory are the big losses. I'm going to give him a... I'm going to give him a B. Wow. When I started breaking down the Cowboys right now, I thought, okay, yeah, these guys did awfully, but I think they did well considering what they did in the draft. And like contracts are so valuable. It's like many years for not much money. And Tyler Smith, I if all goes well, he'll end up being lauded as like one of the great offensive linemen in NFL history, possibly. Like he's that good already. Um, and they kept their guys, brought in Fowler to offset the hurt of losing Gregory somewhat. So I'm actually a bit of a fan of the Cowboys offseason. So very good. I think I'm on a roll here. So thanks for those watching, sticking around. All right, Giants. Okay. Casey Kreider is pretty good at long snapper. Everyone else, like below average. That contract's awful. Considering that the Giants let their former second round pick, I think, Will Hernandez, sign with the Cardinals for very little money. I don't know how you can compare Hernandez and Glowinski and go, yes, Glowinski is deserving of this, and we should let Hernandez go. That is like Daniel Jones might die back there, in the pocket. Like the Colts have had a great offensive line, but Glowinski I think was the weak link, and so yeah, that's not great. Um, who'd they lose? Evan Ingram. Yep, big loss. Hernandez, big loss. Lorenzo Carter, big loss. I mean, getting rid of Bradbury was good because he's not great. Um, Peppers is lost. Kayvon Thibodeau. Okay, so Kayvon Thibodeau will replace Lorenzo Carter, and Thibodeau is awesome at a very young age, so that's great. Evan Neal's okay. Wandale Robinson, I don't like much because he just doesn't, unless he has the ball in his hands, he doesn't put in much effort, whether it be blocking or getting open. So he should be at running back or something because he is dynamic with the ball, but I don't think he is a good receiver. Azudu's not very good. Cadell Flott's not very good. So overall, getting Thibodeau is pretty awesome though. So all right. So probably downright bad additions because Taylor, you shouldn't Taylor. Who have they? They might have already had some decent enough backup too. Like paying that much for Tyrod Taylor, who has had his starting opportunities and he hasn't really done much with it. I know he got the Bills to that playoff game, but yeah, okay. Well, there wasn't any really standout backup, but paying Taylor that much to sit behind Daniel Jones, not a huge fan of that. And that Glowinski contract is not great. And the rest of these contracts aren't coming up with how much they're worth, but we'll just assume they're pretty minimum deals. But they lost, so they added Thibodeau. Essentially, all they did was add Thibodeau, but they lost Ingram, Hernandez, Lorenzo Carter, Jabril Peppers, and they gave Glowinski that bad contract. I'm gonna give him a D. Because there's no like head, there's no like eye-wateringly bad decision here. Had an okay draft, but yeah. Okay, I think we can get through it. I think we can get through it in one go. It might be a 3 hour stream, but again, it's been done before. Okay. Philadelphia Eagles. Boston Scott's okay. Okay, so yeah, I spoke about that AJ Brown. They traded a first and a third for AJ Brown, and they gave him what will go down as one of the biggest overpays in NFL history. I mean, it might be not be deemed an overpay now because people are like AJ Brown. I'll do like the Major Kill mocking voice, like the Timmy mocking voice. But AJ Brown, he's so good with the ball in his hands. Yeah, well, look, if that's the case, move him to running back or like a position where he can use his like. Yes, he can run fast and he's big and strong, so he's going to be hard to tackle. But there's so much nuance that goes in the receiver position. Like, does he get open? Is number one. And from memory, he's not urgent enough. He doesn't turn his eyes to the quarterback quickly enough. He doesn't find soft spots in zones quick enough. He's just not a smart player out there, I don't think. So it looks like he's going to average out to like $20 million a year they're going to pay him. And, oh, this might get Howie Roseman fired within a couple of years when Eagles fans see the bill that they're going to have to foot for AJ Brown. There might be riots. And they gave up so much draft capital. And yeah, so the Eagles traded the 18th overall pick to the Titans, who they used on Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks is better than AJ Brown. Madness. This isn't looking good for Philadelphia Eagles. Um, Jordan Davis, good player. Kevin Jurgens, solid. Nakobe Dean, okay. The Eagles just doubling down on defensive tackles all the time is crazy because they're paying Javon Hargrave a lot of money at defensive tackle, even though he's worth it. I didn't just mess up my stream accidentally, did I? They were paying Fletcher Cox huge money. I think they picked Milton Williams third round or something, and Marvin Wilson's a good player, so that I think they should have just been happy with him. But at the end of the day, you can't fault a team for picking a good player, and Jordan Davis is a good player. So it's just like it just seems to be a trend. Like there's this narrative. Oh, we've got to fortify the trenches. The and teams just allocate too much capital to certain positions and overlook other areas, and they lose. The Eagles have poured so much. Like they'll paying Josh Sweat a lot of money, Brandon Graham a lot of money. Hargrave's worth it though. They picked Jared Barnett first overall with their first pick in the 2017 draft, I think, and they'll be paying him a lot of money. But it's just an over allocation of capital, I think. But anyway, they got Jordan Davis. Him and Javon Hargrave will cause some problems for defensive lines. Kelsey's was good 2 years ago. I don't know. He's getting on a bit, so I don't know if he's. I'm not. I don't think he'd be of that value, but he won't be a liability either. Okay, so you're telling me the Eagles they let Joe Osman, who's a dominant edge defender, go, and they let Jannard Avery, who's not as good but still a great player, go, and they signed Hassan Reddick to a 3-year, $45 million deal. It's not looking good for Eagles fans. Kaiser White's a good player though. Bradbury, that's not a huge commitment of capital, but I think Bradbury's proven that he's not great. So I don't know why you'd pay him $10 million. Anthony Harris is good though. He deserves that. He deserves to be in the league at least. Okay, so yeah, there's that. Jordan Howard's a good running back. Brandon Brooks, elite guard, so losing him will hurt a lot. Again, they lost Jannard Avery. They lost Steven Nelson, who was a great pickup for them. And yeah, so their draft was okay. But the contracts they handed out to Brown and Reddick are obscene. And they lost some key players. So therefore, the addition of Jordan Davis and okay, so Jordan Davis, Kaiser White, Anthony Harris are in. There's a lot of factors in regards to grade. I think I'll give him a D. They picked up some undervalued guys, but they also overpaid for guys and let some monsters walk. So, all right, we can do this. Washington Commanders. Tyler Heineke's better than Carson Wentz. I don't think the quarterback situation it was the problem in Washington. I think it was the receivers. Like the coaching staff clearly can't evaluate receivers properly because they had Steven Sims, who was an absolute baller at receiver, and they cut him and they play Curtis Samuel. They're paying him huge money. Of course, he used to play for the coach at another team, and so they bring him in thinking they can I don't know. There's just that's too much homerism. Curtis Samuel is not an impact player, and yet the coaching staff wanted to bring him in because he used to play for them in another location. It's not acceptable. Terry McLaurin, also one of the most, along with CeeDee Lamb, one of the most overrated players in the NFL. People are like, oh, he's going to be coming on a $20 million contract. What has he done? No. Jan Dotson just got drafted and he's meh. Cam Sims is meh. Jamie Brown's just not good at all, I don't think. So it wasn't the quarterback situation that was holding the Washington Commanders back. It was the receiving core that was out there, and also Antonio Gibson getting snaps when they have literally the best running back, one of the best running backs in the NFL, in Jarrett Patterson. I don't understand how you can be at practice every day and see Jarrett Patterson do what he does, is perfect in almost every regard, and you say, yes, we'll give Antonio Gibson like 80% of snaps. And I suppose I'll use this lineups tool to show y'all. This isn't a great way to show. Alright, where's select none? And where are we? Washington. So Gibson got hurt, but when he was playing, what's going on here? Oh, they gave JD McKissick a fair few snaps. But Gibson had at least 50% of the snaps, and he's a fumble risk. Like, you can't be playing a running back who's a fumble risk, I don't think. Exposed the ball, and I remember he had a critical fumble that ended up leading to the team losing last season. So, and once you all see what Jarrett Patterson can do if he gets his opportunities, Washington fans will be happy, but they'll just think like, okay, could the 2021 season have been better if we had have just played Patterson over Gibson? Anyway, yeah, this quarterback situation is silly. 2 third-rounders for Carson Wentz. Yeah, look, Wentz is okay, and Wentz is just there. He's about what this contract is in terms of value. So, um, it's not the end of the world. I'd probably give it a D, considering that Heineke was already there. But Wentz can play. He's okay. So, not a huge L there. They're paying Cornelius Lucas decent money, which is scary because he's not very good, I don't think. So if he's getting playing time, that's troublesome for them. They got Obata, but I'm not sure he'll get that much playing time because they've got Chase Young, who's good. And Montez Sweat, who's just great athlete. Like, put him at receiver. He's that fast and that big. He'll be able to get some contested catches, but he hasn't got the smarts to like understand what to do on at defensive end in terms of like navigating through traffic and like or like hand placement, things like that. He's just an outstanding athlete. So put him where the athleticism can shine, I think. Maybe receiver would be there. James Smith-Williams, one of the best players from the 2020 NFL draft, and I think he started getting some snaps. Um, where is he? Can we specify what defensive position he was at? Yeah, so 35% of snaps for a former. I think he was drafted in the 7th round. To be playing 35% of snaps last season is encouraging. So I hope he gets more snaps because he's a great player. Joey Sly is pretty good. He was a good pickup. Again, a former Carolina guy, so it's like, yeah, sometimes picking up a player who used to who used to play for the coach who's now in charge elsewhere, it can work at times, and then in the case of Curtis Samuel, it can not work. But if you're going to play favorites and say, yeah, we'll bring in a guy who I know from a previous job, you'd better be right, or it might be fair enough to say, okay, was there some sort of favoritism there? That's, I think that's fair enough. Adam Humphries is good, and he was their best receiver, and he's gone. So what does that say? Losing Scherf's going to hurt. Yeah, that offensive line's going to be not great from what I remember. We'll just have a quick look at who they drafted. John Dotson's, Fidarian Mathis is okay. Yeah, he'll be okay. And so he'll replace Matt Ioannidis pretty well at defensive tackle. Brian Robertson's a very good running back, so hopefully he and Jarrett Patterson. Hopefully, I mean, if I was coaching him, Patterson would get like 80% of the snaps, and then Robertson would come in to replace him. But if Robinson can at least take some snaps from Antonio Gibson, I think that will do the team a service. But oh yeah, what's the offensive line situation? Roulier's good, Leno's good. Wow, they're paying Leno big money even though he got cut by the Bears. I mean, it's good because Leno is a good player, but that's a lot of money. I'm not sure how this contract situation works, like how much, because I think a lot of this can be adjusted. Like guys can be cut, and like the team doesn't have to pay them any of this. Like for instance, in 2024, Charles Leno 14 mil. The team might just be able to cut him and not actually pay him that. It's not as like it's not as clear cut as NBA contracts, which I've looked at in the past, where it's all guaranteed, and if a guy gets cut and the team still has to pay him all that money, it's not the case in the NFL. It's much more fluid. But Leno and Roulier are great. Schweitzer, Turner, Norwell, Lucas, Cosme are all, and Larson are all not good. Sadiq Charles is great, and I would again, unfortunately, I think Ron Rivera has actually done one of the worst coaching jobs in the last few years. When you look at the players that he hasn't kept on the roster or hasn't given playing time, because this team could have done extremely well in years past, but they just haven't put the best players on the field. And the Jarrett Patterson case is the most glaring one. Um, playing Montez Sweat over James Smith Williams. Um, I might be a bit too critical, but yeah, it's just I've just had to shake my head at some of the decisions by the coaching staff lately. Um, so yeah. Um, all right. So the draft was pretty good, relatively speaking, in the first three rounds. Remember, it's pretty good actually. I'm giving him a C because does the draft improve the situation enough for a B? Nah, nah. I'm giving him a C because yeah, for reasons I have just mentioned. All right. Okay, we're getting there. All right. Chicago Bears. Dante Pettis is good. I don't know why he was in the 49ers doghouse. He's a good player and they drafted him high. Julian Davenport's good. Who are the Bears going to play at offensive line? Whitehair's good. Yeah, will Tevin Jenkins play at left tackle or right tackle? Julian Davenport might be the designated left tackle, which would be great. Jaquan Briscoe's pretty good. I don't like Willis Jones much. Kyler Gordon's okay. Um, yeah. All right. So I think they're going with the Houston Texans tactic here, where they understand they're in kind of rebuilding mode and they're not committing huge money to any players, um, which is pretty smart. No, you don't want to be hamstrung by overspends, but I personally think that you could probably pick up a Super Bowl winning team on like minimum contracts each year. So none of these guys are going. I mean, to be fair, I don't know how good Matt Adams is. Matt Adams might be a Hall of Fame linebacker, and he might have swayed this. I don't think I've evaluated Matt Adams, but I've evaluated everyone else, and they're just not big impact players apart from Davenport, and he's just like a little bit above average. And Pettis, but who are the Bears going to play at receiver? Yeah, they're just. Are they even spending like the league minimum amount of money? Because they just like don't have any big money contracts anywhere by the look of it. Like even their quarterbacks on a rookie contract. I suppose paying Eddie Jackson like 15 mil a year will raise your salary cap. They don't have much dead money. Robert Quinn's about worth that contract, but again, that's dangerous because anything goes wrong and you're not getting the value for it. Cody Whitehair's on big money. Why didn't they just bring back James Daniels? He wasn't even offered that much money. Young player, so he fits in with the whole rebuild, and he's dominant. And they cut Tarek Cohen, even though he's an outstanding player. Um, they look at this. Demontre Tuggle, one of the best draft prospects in recent memory, undrafted, has at least made the 90-man roster and looks like he's gotten some Ash K for that. And if you look at my channel, I've kind of been promoting him a lot. I interviewed him. Um, might have even helped him get recruited to the Bears through working with his agent. So it makes me happy to see Demontre Tuggle, who truly deserves to have a spot on an NFL roster, get to where he is. So that's personally a pretty cool thing to see this. Demontre Tuggle has made an NFL roster. At least the 90, I guess. Anyways, but unfortunately, I play like David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert will probably play a lot, and so I can't really give the Bears like an outstanding grade for bringing in Tuggle, even though Tuggle is that big of a difference maker, because I'm not sure he'll play that much, and he might not even survive the cuts to the 53-man roster. But the team's not going to lose out by cutting any of the other guys, so I think Demontre Tuggle could make the roster. That's pretty awesome. But yeah, no huge swing here. But losing Tarek Cohen, Allen Robinson, James Daniels, Eddie Goldman, Akeem Hicks, Bilal Nichols, Khalil Mack, and they didn't even do all that much with their draft, so it's a huge loss. This is not looking good. So there's nothing to be said about the additions, really, or the draft, and they lost a lot of outstanding players. So that okay. So Eddie Goldman and even Jason Peters is amazing. Like 38 years old and still being a decent player. Okay. The Bears could still bring back Goldman but particularly Hicks. Like Hicks is one of the best. Like he's second to me at defensive tackle rankings behind Shelby Harris. Like he's just incredible. But he might not fit in with the rebuilding plan that the Bears might have. If they bring him back, it'll really salvage their offseason somewhat. But this is an F, I think. They had an okay draft, but it's just not enough. They could go winless. You know, they might do well to win like 4 games because Justin Fields is a great athlete, but it's extremely inaccurate because of his throwing mechanics issues. So he's not going to be good enough to make a big difference. Sorry, Bears fans. Yeah. And like there's really just silly like losing James Daniels didn't make any sense. I understand like and not paying Allen Robinson huge money, okay? But Tarek Cohen is the man, you know. I mean, obviously a fan favorite, being probably the smallest player in the NFL, but also just pardon me, just an absolute pleasure to watch and a true impact player. So why not keep a good thing going? Even though he did tear his ACL, but at least keep him on the roster, you know, because he's worth it. He's worth like on my grading scale, he's worth like $200 million as opposed to the average NFL player being worth 10. So that gives you an impression of how much of an impact he has. Akeem Hicks is worth billions of dollars though, so they should bring him back if they want to win. But maybe they're tanking, you know. Oh yeah, and they lost Bilal Nichols. Yeah, definitely an F. Definitely an F. Soz. All right, Detroit Lions. Off the top of my head, they did great because they brought in some like Deshaun Elliott and Mike Hughes, outstanding players in the secondary. Mike Hughes, Deshaun Elliott, and re-signed Tracy Walker. Like it's a lot of money, but he's worth it. Yeah. How they do in the draft again? Aiden Hutchinson will be a bust. Well, look, he might improve dramatically over the off seasons, but based on his ability from his tape at Michigan, inexcusable lack of effort at a lot, and just doesn't really have the technique and stuff. Like he's physically imposing and things, but pretty much everyone in the NFL is physically imposing somewhat. So yeah, I gave him a D grade as a player overall, not just like based on the value of the pick, but overall. And so yeah, um, he's not going to be the guy that you all think he could be. I don't think. I'm afraid, unless he improves. You never know. A lot of guys can like Justin Herbert and Daniel Jones when they came out of the draft. I'd probably give him like a C grade. Um, and they might like they were just like league average quarterbacks, but now they're clearly like top five. So they've clearly worked on their games a lot. But then what's an example of that not happening so much? Or like, okay, here's another example. TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant came out of the draft from Iowa as tight ends in 2019. I had TJ Hawkinson as a slightly better player than Noah Fant at the time. They were both okay, but I had TJ Hawkinson slightly better. And this is relevant to the Lions too, funnily enough. But Noah Fant's now progressed to be one of the best tight ends in the league, and I don't think TJ Hawkinson has improved much at all based on my evaluation of him in since like in the most recent season. So again, it's not about where you start, it's how you end up. So Aiden Hutchinson might end up being an absolutely dominant player, and he has like the physical tools to do so, but at the moment he hasn't got the football brain or the skill to be an impact player. I don't think. Jamison Williams is just okay. Josh Pachal's not very good. I don't think Kirby Joseph was very good. So pretty rough draft. Even though people are saying like the Lions had the best draft, no, they might have filled needs, but they didn't fill needs with good players. I don't think. But they did great to get. They might have one of the best secondaries in the NFL, and I tweeted this out. And the NFL players who I referenced, like Deshaun Elliott, Mike Hughes, AJ Parker, Jeff Okuda, all those guys, they didn't interact with me. Like, come on, guys, I'm blowing smoke up your ass. Can't you give me some love? But they might have the best secondary in the league. Tracy Walker, Deshaun Elliott, Mike Hughes, Jeff Okuda, and AJ Parker in the slot. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch. But, you know, we'll see if that is actually the lineup. All right, who'd they lose? Kadarrell Hodge is a really good receiver. The Browns had, yeah, The Browns had Landry, Beckham, Rashad Higgins, and Kadarrell Hodge, all outstanding players, if not Hall of Fame level players. In the case of Landry and Beckham, um, and now they've got Cooper and Jakeem Grant. Yeah, just this fall from grace for the Browns is going to be tragic, I think, because for the first time in a long time they had some success. But maybe the Lions can do the reverse. So they are going to have a lot of dead money on the Trey Flowers contract, from memory, because again, Matt Patricia, former Patriots coach, moves to the Lions, and then he wants to bring in one of his favorite defensive players and paid him like $18 million a year, right? So is that not a classic case of like kind of favoritism getting in the way of like, is Trey Flowers worth that money? And it kind of turns out he wasn't, like kind of objectively, considering that they've cut him and they're paying him $12 million not to play for them based on the amount of money that they'd save in doing so. So yeah, it didn't work out great. So considering a pretty mediocre draft, yeah, it's probably they just didn't do anything outside of getting Tracy Walker, getting Deshaun Elliott, and Mike Hughes essentially. And DJ Chark's not great, and they pay him 10 mil, and he'll start for them, so that's not great. Mm. It's almost tempting to give him a D because they lucked out with Elliott and Hughes because there's a clear trend that they don't really know what they're doing when it comes to player evaluation, I think. And Charles Harris, 2 years, 14 mil. It's too much. Josh Reynolds, 2 years, 12 mil. And they haven't resolved the quarterback situation. Like Jared Goff's not the man. You can't have him as quarterback and paying him what they're paying him, like 40 mil or whatever, and have the level of production, 30 mil, have the level of production that they're getting. I'm gonna give them a D because you can't just do. You might bring in some absolute studs, but you know, cumulatively, they just did not do enough. So, but it's not an F because they did bring in. I just hope Deshaun Elliott comes in and just like he's a fun player to watch from a defensive standpoint because he will hurt you in like a safe manner, if that makes sense. Because his tackling technique's so good. And he talks a lot. I've heard him talk a lot of crap as well, which is what I like to see. Like, let people know that he's there. So if Deshaun Elliott gets a lot of snaps, I'm excited for that. So I think the Lions will be a little bit improved. They might win even 2 more games than last year because of the addition of Elliott and Hughes. Um, but who else they got in their division again? Packers. Yeah, they'll still might have a hard time because they just didn't do enough with the rest of their roster. Okay. All right. Aaron Rodgers is worth about $6 million a year. And what are they paying him? 150, 150 over the next 3, or at least minimum 100. So that's an F, unquestionably. Sammy Watkins is good. Andre Campbell went from like being a casted off by the Cardinals, and no one seemed to want him because he played on a small contract with the Packers last year. Now he's 5 years, 50 mil. So that's a great success story. He's about worth that, but that's elite linebacker money he's getting, and I don't think he is that. Anyway, Preston Smith's okay, but they're paying him big money. Jay Alexander's worth about that, but there's more value to be had elsewhere. This is all an F grade because Rodgers doesn't deserve that money. Whitney Merciless, one of the best defensive players in the NFL. He retired, but he didn't really play for the Packers much last season anyway. He got hurt, so. They had an okay draft, but no game changers. Sean Ryan. Yeah, they're all okay. Pretty well-rounded draft. These guys will turn into contributors, I think, in the end. But it's an F because you can't be paying Rodgers that much. It's just a complete lack of evaluation. And maybe I should do a Rodgers breakdown video, but again, he's been able to beat up on bad opponents for so long in that division. Um, he might have some fancy sort of off balance passes and things like that, but he's 40 years old and it's an F. And when I know the caliber of quarterbacks that are on the street right now that could just beat Rodgers handily in any quarterback contest, it just makes it sting even more. I've been parched pretty much this whole time, but I can get through it. I run ultra marathons, so when you run ultra marathons, you tend to learn how to deal with physical discomfort for extended periods. All right, the Vikings. Here's another example of a team doubling down on a mediocre quarterback. 35 million for Kirk Cousins. He's worth maybe 10 mil. That's a great contract for 13 mil for Harrison Phillips over potentially over 3 years. Yeah, I didn't think like he was like known as that good of a player in NFL circles, but yeah, he's okay. He'll replace Michael Pierce pretty well, I think. Tadarius Smith highly overrated. For a long time there, he was one of the most overpaid players in the league by the Packers, and he's overpaid again. Like physically imposing guy, but can he beat blockers? That's like the primary job of a defensive lineman. But they re-signed Jordan Berry, who's a fellow Australian and the best punter in the NFL because he gets the ball away quickly, and he can put it where he wants it and he can kick it far. But primarily, he gets the ball away quickly. Like the worst possible outcome when you're punting is your punt being blocked, and I don't think it's ever happened with Berry, and it might never because he catches the ball and then evaluates where the pressure is coming from, then kicks it from memory, and he does it better than anyone else. So he's the man. All right. And Greg Joseph's a pretty good kicker, but other than that, it's just the quarterback situation. Like the Vikings haven't been contenders since they've been overpaying their quarterbacks. When they had Teddy Bridgewater and Case Keenum, they made the what was it? The AFC or NFC? I don't know. They made the championship game, like based on the Minneapolis Miracle and all that. But that was a great time to be a Vikings fan, and it's been awful ever since. And Kirk Cousins deserves the derision that he's gotten because he's not worth that contract. Who'd they lose? Rashad Hill's actually their best offensive lineman, or he was last year, and he's not anywhere. Sheldon Richardson's a good player. No way. Are you kidding me? Anthony Barr is a perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's just one of the best defensive players, and he's not signed by anywhere. I know he's had injury issues, but he is an absolute game changer. Is this an F? How many? We've got two A's. That's not great. Um, what am I looking at? Minnesota. Booth and Scene will stick in the league, I think. Ingram and Asamoah won't, from memory. But no one will make a big impact from day one. Look, if they re-sign Anthony Barr, then all will be well. But as it currently stands, that's an F. Because again, it's just the same situation as the Packers. They're allocating too much money to that quarterback position at the expense of other positions. And some big overpay or like just allocation of money to players who don't deserve it. Yeah, but getting a Hall of Fame level punter enough to get a team out of the F grade to elevate them? Yeah, I think the Vikings one isn't definitive because it depends on what happens with Anthony Barr. But if he doesn't come back, that's a awful off season, and the Vikings might win like 2 games, something like that. They've just hung on to Cousins too long, and just re-upped with him. It doesn't make any sense. All right, okay. Just let my ears just rest up a little bit. I should invest in a little microphone. All right. Yep, I can do it. We can do it. Okay. If the Falcons play Josh Rosen, then they'll be in a good situation with the quarterbacks. But if Mariota or Desmond Ridder play, then they're going to be cellar dwellers. Rosen's great. He's a good player. He just hasn't had he got thrust into a horrible Arizona Cardinals team, and then hasn't really been given like starters opportunities since. But he's a great player. So they got Hodge and Tate, but I don't know where they are in the pecking order. You know what, guys? I think I deserve to go and get a refill of my water bottle. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay? I haven't even had my morning coffee yet. So I'll be back in about 30 seconds. Woo! I live for that. I live for those back cracks. Okay, where are we at? Everything good? Okay. So, yeah, the Falcons. What do we? Okay, looking at the receiver depth chart. Oh my goodness, they drafted Drake London 8th overall, and he is just on paper he might be good with his testing numbers and his size and stuff, but if you look at my evaluation of the draft picks in the recent draft, London London does a disservice to his quarterback in that he just doesn't get open and he doesn't look back to the ball quickly enough. Just the classic example of a measurables over production guy, in my opinion. So, and the team already had Auden Tate, Kadarrell Hodge, Frank Darby is a great player, and they have Calvin Ridley. He's suspended. Calvin Ridley got, for those who aren't aware, Calvin Ridley got suspended for betting on an NFL game, and I think he like bet on his own team winning, and I don't think it was a huge amount of money, and he got suspended for the entire season. So the NFL takes that whole like you know jeopardizing the integrity of the game thing by betting on by insiders betting on the games very seriously. And Calvin Ridley is an amazing player, so that's a big L for the Falcons. But yeah, that Drake London decision was awful. Because if you have Tate, Hodge, and Darby, that's probably the best three. That's like the best starting receiver core in the NFL. But instead, it might be London, Zacchaeus, and Bird based on the contracts, or even Brian Edwards, who's not very good. So yeah, I don't think I can really praise the Falcons for bringing in Tate and Hodge because I'm actually doubting that they'll get any playing time. Nice. Carter, Kwiatkowski, and Hayward. Yes, yes. I love to see it. Youngwei Koo, one of the best kickers in the league. And or not, I don't know, probably top 10 kicker in the league. I've literally got a list. I've got a list of the best kickers in the NFL. All right. If you want that list, you got to give me a job in football. Um, I actually think I don't know how good Bo Brinkley is. I don't think, but they did have Josh Harris, who's now on the Chargers, and he was a great long snapper for them. No, what did I just say about Josh Rosen? And he's not even on the Falcons. Holy crap! Yeah, the Falcons are going to be absolute garbage this year because they're going to trot out either Mariota or Ritter, who are both awful. Josh Rosen's had a rough trot, but we'll see. We'll see if he can fight through that adversity and get a shot somewhere and ball out. Oh yeah, so a factor to consider here is that they're paying Matt Ryan $40 million not to pay for them. They're paying Julio Jones 15 mil to not pay for them. That's and that Julio Jones decision was made last off season, so I can't really factor that into the grading. But Matt Ryan, they trade. I mean, they shouldn't have given Matt Ryan that contract in the first place, and the Colts have just handicapped themselves by committing more to Matt Ryan. But paying a guy 40 mil not to play for you is just. I mean, what can you do? What can you do? Because that contract was hard to get out from under. But I've got to take that into consideration. And they got a third round pick, but who'd they use it on? London. Ebikadi. Arnold Ebikadi, one of the best defenders in the draft. Great, great player. So that'll boost their grade for sure. Troy Anderson. Watch that. Oh, did I? Yeah, he's not in that video. But if people get around the evaluation of the draft picks video that I've got up, of the top 45 draft picks I've got up, if people get around it enough, I'll release my evaluation of Troy Anderson with tape to support it. He's a jogger, and he does. Yeah, for a second round pick, I'm not sure if his coaching staff will even let him see the field. He's that ineffective, unfortunately. Um, so apart from Ebikadi, they did awfully in the draft based on the picks from rounds 1 to 3. They lost Hayden Hurst. That Kyle Pitts pick was silly. Kyle Pitts, it's just. I think he had like 1,000 receiving yards, but I think it just benefits from just having being the fourth overall pick and having heaps of snaps. Like you're gonna put up big numbers if you're. Well, the team was always throwing because they had to play catch up because they were losing so much, and Pitts was always. Let's have a look. We can have a look at this. Pitts was getting. I guarantee, a hefty amount of snaps. Oh, I don't want the Washington. 73% of snaps at tight end is significant. And what's all this? Oh, that's the snap count, and that's the snap percentage. Okay, yeah. So you're going to put up numbers if you're on the field 73% of the time, right? I mean, from memory, he's not awful, but he's not the difference maker that you all might, or that draft nicks might have thought he was. And they'd already traded a second round pick for Hayden Hurst, and he was balling out. So why do you need to add Pitts to that equation with the fourth overall pick last season? But anyway, that's yesterday's news. But it just facilitated the loss of Hurst, which sucks for them. Losing Dante Fowler. I mean, they're saving a whole bunch of money and cutting Dante Fowler. So, but why'd they bring him in for huge money in the first place if they're not going to... Well, I can't say you should commit to him because guys are getting overpaid and you should get out of that as soon as possible when you can. But anyways, he was probably worth his contract, so I would have kept him. But I think the Falcons are clearly rebuilding. They let Aluakon walk without matching what the Jaguars paid him, so that was a good decision. Yeah, they lost. Morstead was their punter, was he? He moved around after being cut by the Saints, but it's just I think just based solely on the draft, it's probably a C because Ebikadi's great. Okay, so what do we know? Who's going to play for them based on these additions? They picked up some nice players. Oh, can I make it? Can I get the rest of these teams done? I feel like I'm waffling a bit. Alright. I just really love what they did here. Carter, Kwiatkowski, and Hayward. Awesome. Very, very good. But I'm giving him a D. Alright. We need to wrap this thing up anyway. My fragile little ears, and they are little ears. Look at my little ears. My little ears are a bit fragile. Oh, okay. Now we've come to hopefully some just redeeming decisions here. Although that DJ Moore's not worth that, but well, he sort of is, but he's not an elite receiver. He's not top shelf receiver worthy of that much money. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh. He's pretty good. Rashad Higgins is better than him though. Anyway, but it's probably marginal. Love that. That's okay. Love that. Love that. They paid Ian Thomas a lot of money. I think everyone. I literally looked at the NFL subreddit and the Panthers subreddit. I think is Ian Thomas worth I think he's on $6 million a year or something. And people I think even the Panthers fans are no, this is a weird decision. Anyway, that's a huge overpay, unfortunately. Bozeman, great. Ioannidis, pretty good. Middleton, very good. No. Oh, I thought the Panthers would redeem, although they did. They drafted Matt Corral, would be a top 5 quarterback immediately. So, by picking Corral and hopefully playing him, if Matt Rule plays Sam Darnold over Matt Corral, he should be fired. I've got no mercy in saying that. But if they give Corral starting reps, then Corral might single handedly save him and his general manager's job. He's that good. Over Dante Jackson. I mean, yeah, he was drafted in the first round, but well, look, I did reevaluate him, and he's still not all that good. So paying him top cornerback money, big mistake. This is all a C grade, I think, because oh, no, I think it might be a B because that the Jackson and Corbett contracts are exorbitant, but everything else is not too bad. But we'll see who they lost. Matt Paratus going is a big loss. Do they replace him? They got Ikwonu. Oh, I think I've been saying his name wrong, but he's not all that good, and I think he's designated left tackle, which is problematic. Who are the Panthers? What's their center situation? This is important, guys. Okay. Moton, awesome. See, look, Moton's not getting paid $24 million a year. That'll be adjusted. That might be the average over the course of his contract, but he's actually worth that. He's an outstanding player. Cam Irving's good. Okay, so maybe Iquanu will be left guard. Pat Elfline. Oh yeah, sorry, Bozeman. Look, holy moly, Moton, Irving, Elfline, Bozeman, and that is that's amongst the best offensive lines I've ever seen in the NFL over the last like 4 years. I've been studying the NFL closely, and then throwing in. They're paying a lot of money to a lot of guys. Bozeman might not even start. Yeah, it's probably. What are we looking at? Corbett, Aquanu, and Moton are definitely going to play. Yeah, we'll see how that shapes out, but it'll be a good offensive line. Yeah, I'm good for them. But yeah, losing Pratis isn't good. Losing AJ Boyer and Stefan Gilmore's not great. Okay, we'll assume that Matt Corral ends up starting by like week 5 or something, because Darnold's just not. He's unless he's done insane work to improve his throwing mechanics over the offseason, he's not. He's not starting caliber. I'm gonna give him a B because they don't get an A. Do they deserve an A? They might deserve an A. Because I don't think the big contracts they handed out aren't the end of the world. And they didn't lose too many guys, and they got Matt Corral. I'm giving him an A. Wow. Because they picked up some underrated guys, right? Bozeman, Middleton, Higgins. I don't like these special teamers they got. But they didn't lose too much, and Matt Corral is the man. So one player can single-handedly turn the tide of your team. You can be that good. All right, nearly there. 6 teams left. Ian Book is much better than Jameis Winston, so why would you pay Jameis Winston that much money and designate him as the starter? Jarvis Landry, one of the best players in their league. So I think, yeah, that's an A plus straight up. Charlton's good. Matthews, awesome. Marcus May's solid. I didn't bring him up in the Jets evaluation because he's just kind of league average, but um, he's not a liability either. I think that safety duo will be nice. I like that a lot. And considering they got Marshall and Lattimore, Paulson, Adebo, I think they drafted a cornerback who was pretty good. Alontae Taylor. See? I know my crap. Alontae Taylor's a good cornerback coming out of college, so that's awesome for them. That secondary will be probably one of the best in the league, for sure. Um, Losing Armstead hurts, but he's being paid heaps of money, so it's not that losing him. Unfortunately, I think they're going to play Trevor Penning at left tackle, and he's just he doesn't do his job. He doesn't play hard. Doesn't have the fundamentals. Like big dude, but you're going to see whatever quarterback. You're probably going to see Jameis throw a lot of panic interceptions because he's going to have his blind side unprotected a lot. Like there's little tape of Penning letting a rusher get past him instead of fighting to try and catch up with him before his quarterback gets absolutely demolished. Penning just jogs and just lets his quarterback get hurt. Like that's not acceptable. All that stuff is just pure effort. It's got nothing to do with like skill or size or ability or technique. It's all to do with effort. And a lot of this game is about effort. And Penning doesn't have it. So he needs to work on that. Um, because the draft, Olave's okay, Penning's not good, Alontae Taylor's okay. This draft isn't enough to boost the off season of the Saints much. Jeff Heath, I love Jeff Heath. He's a great player. Um, but look, when it's all said and done, I'm giving them an A because they got Jarvis and they got Tyron. Didn't give out any bad horrific contracts. I mean, Jameis is okay. You can probably stomach paying him that much as a backup. It's a bit tough. And yeah, all right. I'm being a bit generous because I think only the Dolphins actually evaluated. Like pretty much every addition they made was awesome. Anyway, awful. No, nice. I like Stinny. Jensen's good. So the Buccaneers re-signed William Golston, and they've committed to him as like the kind of edge rushing defensive tackle. But there's a player called Jonathan Ledbetter. I think it's Jonathan because there's a Jeremiah Ledbetter as well. Jonathan Ledbetter is one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL, and he was on the Bucks roster in 2020. But he got cut. No one's picked him up, and they keep re-upping with other players, including Vita Vea, who's pretty overrated, I think. And poor old Ledbetter's just on the street, and he's better than everyone he had to play behind or you know getting picked instead of him. Zach Triner's a good long snapper. That Bucks Zach Triner and Ryan Suckup are awesome specialists. Carlton Davis is not very good, so that's yeah the grading that's going to impact the grading negatively. Is Gronk going to come back? Because that'll make a big difference. Logan Hall's okay. Giedike's okay. Shard White's not very good. I don't think the Bucks are great at evaluating running backs because they kept giving Ronald Jones opportunities even though he's a fumble risk. But getting Fournette, re-upping Fournette's pretty good. Getting Bernard back's good. Getting Mason's good. Mm, I'm just giving him a C. because the addition of Shaq, like, so they kept the squad together, which is what I like. Because Jensen's good, Stinny's good, um, Triner's good, Fournette's good, Bernard's good. I'm not a huge Brady fan, um, at this stage of his career anyway. The draft was okay. Um, so those nice additions are kind of offset by that Carlton Davis contract and the Chris Godwin contract. Because I think they're paying. Let's have a look how much paying that. How much um the Bucks are paying their receivers. I think it's got to be like the highest amount that any team has paid receivers on a roster ever. You got Mike Evans. Okay, so let's just average it out. So that's like 16 mil a year. You got Russell Gage. That's like 8 mil a year. You got Chris Godwin. That's like 20 mil a year. That's They don't have too many holes in their roster. Maybe in their secondary. Yeah, there's def secondary. Jamal Dean's their only good player in their secondary, I think. So that is just an overcapitalization. You can't be doing that. I know you want to keep Tom Brady as your best buddy, but have good targets to throw to. But they're not even good. None of these guys are good. So it is a C. Yeah. All right. Cardinals. A team I thought might be able to win the Super Bowl last season because of the just mind-blowing talent that they have, but they fell short. I think probably because their offensive line was crap. But I didn't. I don't know. I tend to just watch most of the NFL after the season when I'm evaluating players rather than like live. So I wasn't really following the Cardinals in season all that much. He deserves that. That's great to see. Great player. They gave up. Let's just say they gave up a second rounder for Marquise Brown, which is ridiculous. AJ Green's okay. That's a lot of money for a dude who's in his 30s. But Ertz is the real deal. He's a great player. So that's nice. I like that. Hernandez, awesome get. Okay, Michael Dogby. He hasn't had many snaps. Let's have a look. Am I getting a bit delirious from having streamed for like 3 hours straight, talking so in depth about just football? Arizona, nice and close. Where are we at? Dogby. Dogby. He only had 25% of snaps because he had to play behind folks like Jordan Hicks played that much. Jalen Thompson isn't even the best safety with the last name Thompson on his own roster. Deontay Thompson's much better in my opinion. Um, yeah, so defensive linemen get rotated out a lot, but I suppose so. He had to play behind Zach Allen, JJ Watt, Jordan Phillips, Leki Fotu, which is I don't know. I watch Michael Dogby and I see a guy who beats his blockers pretty much every snap, and I don't know. Leki Fotu is big and stuff, but I don't know if I've ever seen him beat a block. So why would you play Fotu over Dogby? Anyway, maybe because Fotu's like 60 pounds heavier or something, but Dogby could still do the job better. But getting him back is huge, and hopefully he has a breakout season. But if I was general manager, I'd try and bring in that dude because clearly the league isn't just clamoring for him. But I would anyway. Jeff Gladney, he got cut by the Vikings, right? He's a good player, so it's interesting. Aaron Brewer's a good long snapper. Andy Lee, see, I think it's lazy evaluation and like off-season practice to just bring in old guys who are proven, but they might be proven 5 years ago. So you're going off of old information. Andy Lee is not a good punter anymore. He might have been in his prime, but he's not anymore. So don't be surprised if you see his punts get blocked or um, shanked. Sorry, Andy. And okay, so the Cardinals lost some dudes. Chase Edmonds, Christian Kirk, that'll hurt. But like the Cardinals have ridiculous talent at receiver. Like DeAndre Hopkins and Rondale Moore are filthy. And combine that with like AJ Green or Marquise Brown. That is ridiculous. When you have that many good receivers already and you give up a second rounder for Marquise Brown, who again has not done much in the league, it's just not good. Okay. Yeah, none of these guys are impact players. So, um, I love Hernandez. Bring back Ertz and Connor. Awesome. They lost Edmonds, which isn't great. Ooh, what's it gonna be, boys and girls? Um, I'm giving them a. See, like a lot of these decisions are pretty common sense. Like bringing back Dogby's not like a huge deal or anything. It's not like they picked him out from another team. Like, yes, we want you. It was just like, oh, you're on the roster. You've shown something. We'll bring you back. So I'm not going to give the team that much credit for that. It's really just like bring in Gladney. Yeah, and I don't like that Marquise Brown trade. They lost Chase Edmonds. He's awesome. And they didn't do much with the draft, so I'm going to give him a B. All right, three more teams. The Rams. Yep, Stafford's a good quarterback, but not worth that. So hopefully they don't get trapped in the whole, like what the Packers have had to go through the last few years, and the Vikings of just overpaying some dude at the expense of the rest of your roster. So that's a D. Because Stafford's good. He's probably top 15 quarterback in the NFL. Top 10 maybe. Yeah, probably top 10. Yeah, just, but he's on the like physically he'd be on the decline. Like he might have been worth like top quarterback money 3 years ago, but I don't know about now. Um, so yeah, I like Allen Robinson's a nice player. I think they should have given this money to Odell Beckham Jr. though. He's much much better than Robinson. Like Odell will break a game open for you. Allen Robinson will make a few first downs, and that's about it. Which still has its value, but anyway. What I don't know. I didn't understand this when I read this. Note Boom 3 year 40 mil, 25 mil guaranteed. I mean, did Note Boom even get any snaps last year? So why are you paying him that much? That was one of the most head scratching decisions I'd ever seen. Like, how do you give a guy who's like relatively unproven? He played. He played. Okay, so it's not showing playoff snaps. I forget. Did Noteboom play? Was one of these players injured and Noteboom played? But Noteboom's not even a decent difference maker, and he's being paid top tackle money. That's really just like investing too much money in a guy in house when you can get better value elsewhere. Uh, Brian Allen, 3 years. I don't think he deserved that. Bobby Wagner's a good player, but he's been quite overrated for a long time. He's a above average linebacker, but he's not. He's not a Hall of Fame level guy, I don't think. But let's not be too negative, huh? And that contract's fine. Troy Hill, just I think he went undrafted or drafted in the seventh round. Undersized guy, but he knows exactly what he's doing, and his technique is so good that he will still he can stuff the run with the best of them, even though he's like diminutive. Just great guy to watch. outstanding player. So all that's probably a B because I don't understand that note boom contract, and there's some slight overpays elsewhere. So it's a B. And then they lost Odell. What the hell? What are you doing? Bring him back. Joseph Day, Von Miller, Okoronkwo. Oh, that's gonna hurt. The Rams aren't gonna repeat, I don't think. Sorry, because like Von and Odell were huge difference makers that contributed to their success last season, and I don't think they replace it. But Troy Hill's that good, so maybe they do. I think they'll be contenders, but um, they lost some guys. All right, so the only player I've evaluated on this list is Logan Bruss, and I didn't think he was very good. So no differences made with that. Yeah, it's tempting to give them an F. The only reason it's not is because they got Troy Hill, I think. Is losing Odell, Joseph Day, Vaughn, and Okoronkwo is great. But they didn't match the Darius Williams contract, so that was a great decision. I'm gonna give him a D. Yeah, because they'll be good in the short term because Stafford, Robinson, and Wagner will all somewhat live up to the contracts that they're on in the first year. So they might repeat again, and I guess like winning a Super Bowl is almost priceless. Um, but long term, it's going to be harmful because of that Stafford contract. And even the A-Rob contract, I don't know if that'll end up playing out well. That note boom contract, one of the most. Okay, I've got to look this up. Rams playoff snaps. Snap. Oh, it's Pro Football Reference. Note boom. So is this? What is this? What am I looking at? I'll just look up Joe Noteboom. It'll be Joseph Noteboom. Come on. This is a very handy tool. Right, so he played in the first and second week of the playoffs. But he barely played and he's now on like over 10 mil a year. That's crazy. I mean, good for him, but that's one of the strangest contracts I've ever seen. He must have just been balling out in practice or something for him to get that contract because he hasn't like played many snaps. He's going to get 25 million dollars for like definitely crazy. All right, yep. I'm happy with that. It's a D. Troy Hill. It would definitely be an F if Troy Hill wasn't in the factor. All right. Two more. Niners. Dante Johnson is the only impact player here. He's a good cornerback. I like him. Losing most, it hurts. Losing keys. Yeah. Just cut Nick Bosa and sign Arden Key. I'd be happy. Bosa's just. Again, he's probably. I was talking about like Kyle Pitts put up big numbers because he got a whole bunch of snaps, and Nick Bosa gets a whole bunch of snaps. So he's going to put up numbers just from like. Just um, getting more opportunities than everyone else. I don't think he's shown the ability to be a difference maker. So Jaquiski Tart's not even signed. That's interesting. All right, did they do anything in the draft? How do I move this? Yeah, I don't like any of these guys, I'm afraid. None of them are going to be any difference makers. Look, should you get an F just because you just didn't improve the team at all? Because if you haven't done anything to improve the team, then don't you and and then other teams will inevitably improve by adding other good players. Even if I've given them a bad grade, like all these F teams have added at least they some players. Like sure they've lost some players, but they've at least added some players. The Niners haven't added anyone good except for Dante Johnson. I don't think. So I think that's an F because then they're going to be worse by staying the same, if that makes sense. But they haven't even stayed the same because they've lost some guys and added no one better. So that's an F. Yeah, if that makes sense. Okay, Seattle Seahawks. So yeah, I talked about like obviously the Russell Wilson trade is a huge deal. Um, just in general for like the whole world, it's just a huge deal. Like my goodness, Russell Wilson got traded. That's like the most notable news in the world for decades. Um, so yeah, Russell Wilson got traded. I love this trade for the Seahawks. I think though they're gonna have some dead money, which is just it's just hard to stomach paying someone a lot of money to not play for you. Um, and Russell Wilson is a great player. Like, just stick with him. I mean, I know I could replace him with better players, but at the end of the day, he's still a top five quarterback in the league. So can't you just settle your differences and maybe like give Russ more input into the building of the team? Because he's a great player and therefore he knows football and therefore he probably has a list of guys that he wants to have on the team who might be good. I don't know. You just got to appease a guy like Russell Wilson because he's worth it. He's worth a contract, and he is um worth keeping around because you're paying him $26 million not to play in a team. But look, having said all that, they did get a whole bunch of picks, which from memory Charles Cross, boy, I'm up. Kenneth Walker's good, but like they already have Chris Carson and Rashad Penny who are good running backs, so I don't know why they did that. Abraham Lucas isn't very good, so the perpetual Seahawks bad offensive line continues from just from what I can see, unless they added some nice players at offensive line, which they did not. So that's awful. Um, yeah, that Charles Cross, not I'm not a huge fan of him. All right. So for the Seahawks, I would say that trade. See, they got future picks as well. I'm gonna give the trade an overall a B because they did lose one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but they added Shelby Harris, Noah Fant, and a boatload of picks. So that's awesome for them. Will Disley's great. No, he's not. He's an above average player. I would have paid Gerald Everett, who was a tight end for the Seahawks last season. I would have paid Gerald Everett that, and that would have been a home run hit. This is good, but yeah. And they added Fant as well, so that they're gonna have a lot of two tight end sets. But Fant's like a good enough receiver. He could play in the slot. He could play outside and beat some cornerbacks. I think he's that good of a receiver. So yeah, I think the Seahawks are going to be like they're going to compete because they've added some real ballers. It's just like the quarterback situation could be improved. If they added Baker Mayfield, I think they'd be a playoff team. But yeah, that offensive line is just, what have they got? Phil Haynes is good, but that's about it. And they didn't bring back Dwayne Brown. So yeah, it's going to be rough for any quarterback playing behind that offensive line, I think. They got Quentin Jefferson back. That's nice. Uchenna Nwosu is awesome. He's going to make a big difference on the edge, and they haven't had a great edge rusher for a while, from memory. So that that's a great contract. I'm liking this. I am. That is not good. Quandre Diggs is going to get himself hurt, other people hurt, and he's irresponsible with his tackling technique. He is dangerous to have on the field. So to pay him 3 years and $40 million is just like, I don't understand. I thought the Seahawks were pioneers in tackling technique. Like the whole Legion of Boom. I'm pretty sure they brought in like some rugby league, like Melbourne, like rugby league tackling experts to come in and teach them how to tackle, because like gridiron tackling is generally not up to scratch because you put your head in the wrong spot and use your helmet as a weapon. Quandre Diggs is the poster child. Him and Andrew Sandejo, the Mexican meat missile as he's been called, these guys are poster children for bad tackling technique that will get people hurt. Quandre Diggs could get his head in the wrong spot and be paralyzed. Like that's how bad his tackling technique is. So the Seahawks of all teams paying, because I thought they were pioneers in developing tackling technique, paying him that much money is real. I was getting excited about this offseason, but that is not a good deal. Alex Collins is a great running back, so losing him sucks. Everett's okay. Yeah, this is. I thought there was a bit of light there, but it's all gone to darkness because Everett, Jones, Brown, Wagner, Reed are all good players. All right, so let's wrap this thing up. Yeah, no difference mate. Oh, Kenneth Walker's a good player, but he's probably going to be a third string running. They used a second round pick on a player who will probably be a third string running back. They must be subscribing to the logic that like running backs are only really good on their first contract, because yeah, running backs do take a lot of punishment, but so they're pretty much guaranteed to let Chris Carson go in the off season, unless, or are they got him on multiple years? Yeah, I don't know what this means. I think they'll just get rid of Carson and then just have Penny and Kenneth Walker as the guys. Um, but that, yeah, second round pick, like you got to pick a starter for goodness sake, shouldn't you? Anyway, um, so I'll just say that Russell Wilson trade was a B for the Seahawks. Penny's good, Disley's good, and Noosu's awesome. So no exorbitant contracts really, except for the Diggs one. They lost Everett, lost Jones, lost Wagner and Reed. Reed's okay. He's pretty good. I'm gonna give them a. Considering their draft, I'm gonna give them a C. Middle ground. All right, there we have it. Almost 3.5 hours of talking football. Um, yeah, so that's what it looks like. So generally, I would say that teams in this upper echelon are going to see improvements in record, and teams in the F category are going to see a decline in their team record. But obviously, like some decisions are more egregious than others. So yeah, we'll see how this plays out. Have I got anything more to add? Shout out to those who've watched. Yes, very interesting stuff. All right. I haven't got any plugs. If anyone wants to pay me for producing this content, then feel free. Uh, yeah, suppose you just contact me on Twitter, or I got my email address on the YouTube channel. So yeah. All right, this is my first stream, so I guess I just hit end stream. All right, thanks for tuning in, folks. I'll post this tier list on Twitter. Maybe should I put it in the thumbnail as well? No, I'm not going to give away the secrets. I won't put it on the YouTube thumbnail, but I'll post it on Twitter as a summary. And a lot of fans will probably just be like, "What?" Because I understand that my evaluations are often different to what the consensus seems to be, but I like to think I back it up with um, like the work I've put in evaluating so many players, and also just like if I do a film review or if you just watch tape on a player, I think I'm right. Anyway, cheers, guys.